Yep.
Good evening. Welcome to the City Council meeting for Los Alamitos, regular council meeting on March 5th, 2012. Roll call.
Councilmember Graham-Mejia.
Here.
Councilmember Kusumoto.
Here.
Councilmember Stevens.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Poe.
Present.
Mayor Edgar.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Kusumoto and stay standing for the invocation by myself. Thank you.
Please join me for the pledge. Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please bow your head. Dear Lord, this evening we just want to thank you for the blessings that you give our city. We want to thank you for the blessings that you give us in the form of the residents, the city staff, the council members, and the opportunities that we have up here. Lord, tonight we just pray that you look out over our agenda and that you help us come to peace and help us find a way through just a very tough year that we've had. Lord, we just want to thank you for everything. We pray that you'll look out over our soldiers in foreign lands and that you'll keep us safe. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay. Next up, we're going to go through a presentation for Irma Austin. All right. So if council can join me up front. Irma, would you like to join us? Real quick. Good to see you. Good to see you. We have a great opportunity this evening. We get to honor one of our fine commissioners and somebody that everybody up here in this council just has a tremendous amount of respect for. And tonight we get to honor Irma Austin with a plaque for all of her dedication on the Traffic Commission from 2005 to 2012. Irma, you were on the commission when I came on the council in 2006, and I've always, everybody always talks about, we all read the commission meeting minutes, we always get to see who's doing what, where, and every council member follows it very closely. I would say that you always have great comments, great feedback into the process, and I'm just very appreciative of all the service that you've provided us over these years. And I would, as the mayor of Los Alamitos, I'd just like to honor Irma tonight and to present her with this plaque.
It's been a real honor. How I became a traffic commissioner, I was a school bus driver for Los Alamitos Unified for 28 years, and I thought I traveled all around these streets. I should have picked up some news and information. So it was a pleasure, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, we're going to miss you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we're going to go ahead and go into oral communication. At this time, any individual in the audience can come forward and speak on any item within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. We'd ask that your remarks are limited to not more than 5 minutes. I have a couple cards here. I'll just start with the cards. John Osborne. How you doing tonight, John?
Well, obviously I've had better days, Mayor.
Yeah. Skiing accident?
This time of year? No, motocross up in the mountains and dumped my 650, had the MRI a couple hours ago, and I'm down to torn meniscus and ACL. So.
Oh my God.
Dear.
Ooh.
Yeah, so anyhow.
Hope you feel better.
So I will absolutely keep this to 5 minutes. So, all right. So I'm John Osborne. Appreciate being here in front of you. This is my first time in front of the council. I know a few of you, many I do not. I am the new chairman of the board of Los Alamitos Chamber of Commerce. My wife and I have a business here. My wife has been situated here for almost 12 years. Took over an existing practice, and we are also, I want to say commercial developers. That's not entirely the case because we are owner-occupants of a building that we rehabbed on Cherry Street. And I do have a very significant investment in this community. And I'm very glad to be part of this community. I come from a small town in the East Coast in Pennsylvania. Los Alamitos reminds me very much of home, and I feel very much at home here. So I want to thank you all for being deeply passionate about what it is that you do. You each have something to give this community, as do the members of your Chamber of Commerce. I believe that we have regionally, I think we have a unique set of circumstances here in Los Alamitos that will continue to be capitalized on and rewarded as time goes. And I appreciate everything that you guys do. Okay, so that takes care of 2 items. Judy Clabeau usually stands up here and gives a little brief back of calendar of events for the Chamber of Commerce. The 36th annual Los Alamitos Area Chamber of Commerce golf tournament is coming up June 26th, I believe. And we also have Police Appreciation Luncheon coming up March 25th, if that serves me right, and I apologize, I didn't write them down. I'm sorry? March 1st. March 21st. Thanks, Chief. I'm a little, you know, the stuff they gave me for this, you don't think straight. So anyhow. Okay, so my final comment will be relative to the residential and business improvement program that you are about to embark on. I have spoken to not only many chamber members, many non-chamber members, many residents. It's a win-win situation for everybody. I ran into no opposition to this program. You obviously have the money to support it for this year. There were a few comments about you know, it being a localized version of stimulus, and I thought that was kind of a good thing. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor that you're taking on from the business sector. We are in support of the measure. I think that you've done a good job in achieving parity that includes not only the residents but the business community as well. For the business community, depending on the scope or size and dollar value of the project, you know, permit fees could run from several hundred for a simple remodeling or something to several thousand for a McDonald's project or 10,000 for a McDonald's project. And the ability to receive a little bit of that back is encouraging, and especially being the way you've written the ordinance in that it has to be used locally. So I can't go to Home Depot. I'm going to be geared towards Ganal. I'm going to be geared towards forest products. I'm going to be geared to local businesses. So that money is generated locally, it is spent locally. And I think the Chamber will be using a similar model in developing a program to shop locally. It only benefits us all. When we exchange money between us, it benefits us all. Stay local. That's it. Have I exhausted my 5 minutes?
Not yet.
I don't want to
Still
take
got
up
some
too
time.
much of your time. So,
No.
so thank you very much for your time, and I'm actually going to be departing.
Thank you, John. Hope you feel better. Next up, Wendy Gross. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, city manager, and staff. My name is Wendy Gross, and I'm president of the Rossmore Los Alamitos Republican Women Federated. We are celebrating our 50th anniversary this year on March 24th. We are going to be having 2 very well-known political people, George Washington and Abe Lincoln, will be speaking as our guest. They're quite amazing to think about their aging coming to our event. We look forward to seeing all of you there. It's a cost of $40 per person. We start at 10:30 in the morning at Old Ranch Country Club, and if you're interested in tickets for anybody, you can get a hold of Chris Barnes at 562-865-3258, and I'll drop off these for all of you, and there's a few extra in case anybody has any. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that'd like to speak? Seth? I knew you had to be here to speak on something.
Absolutely. It's
How
a
you
pleasure to be before you. Thank you so much, Mayor Edgar, Mayor Pro Tempo, council, staff, members of the public, Seth Eaker representing Run Seal Beach, also coincidentally a past president of the Seal Beach Chamber of Commerce. And I can't tell you how delighted I was to look on your agenda and see discussion item 9B. As someone that championed Shop Local in the Seal Beach community, as someone that's used it as a rallying cry from our summer concert series to other events, I would stand firmly behind this type of initiative in Seal Beach and would strongly encourage the council to move forward with this type of initiative. You know, we can't necessarily, as community members, impact what happens in Washington, D.C., sometimes not even in Sacramento, but I'll tell you what, we can impact what happens in our local communities, and this is the kind of adopted code and ordinance that makes a difference in our community. So let me just say how terrific that is. I'm just overwhelmed. Anyway, moving on to my other hat of Run Seal Beach as the PR chair for that organization and secretary. It's coming up. You want to come run with us, as it says on the back of my shirt. Come run with us on Saturday, April 21st. And I'm going to drop off this poster and also some of the brochures for council and staff. And I would challenge all of you all to come run with us on the 21st. It seems like you guys are going through a challenging time and you're reaching some closure to that. And what a perfect way to demonstrate team spirit, but to be a running team in the race. That would be a fantastic opportunity for all of you. Walk, run, whatever you want to do. So I'll hand these over. I'm going to share a few quick fun facts, if I may, about the Run Seal Beach organization. Total giving for 2011 was $127,135. Out of that, in the last 9 years, Run Seal Beach has given back almost $670,000 to the community. Of the $127,135, 113 of it was awarded through core grant requests, and in addition, there was 14,500 through director's requests. So for a total of 48 organizations, it's pretty amazing. Since 2003, when the grant program began, Los Alamitos schools and organizations have benefited more, I would say in some sense disproportionately than any other. Los Alamitos High School programs and boosters alone has received $262,500, over $250,000. McGaw, McAuliffe, Los Al Elementary, St. Hedwig's, they've received over $57,900. Other Los Alamitos entities include, but aren't limited to, United Youth Water Polo, the Beach Cities Youth Lacrosse, Cancer Support Foundation, Los Al Girls Softball League, Los Alamitos Pop Warner Football, and Total Sports Camp. So since 2003, $370,000 to Los Alamitos-based organizations impacting thousands of children, students, and residents. This year, you need to sign up right now. Do not wait, because we're going to cap out at 5,500 runners and walkers. We know that we're going to cap out because we're already 30% ahead of last year in terms of online registrations. How do you do that? Go to sealbeachrun.com or active.com, but sealbeachrun.com has all of our information. Almost 8,000 mailers went out 2 weeks ago, which is always a huge impetus for our registration stage. We're, as I said, over our goals, 33%, and 4 weeks ahead of time. We have 4 key gold level sponsors I just wanted to highlight. Dendrian Corporation, that's the sponsor for the Kids 1K and Fun Zone. Clean Energy, which is our bib sponsor. Energy Tubulars, the start line sponsor, and Wells Fargo Advisors. Finby Combs Wealth Management, who are the finish line sponsors. We had 41 teams with about 800 runners, and we already have commitments and entries for 18 teams this year and 500 people. It's a special part of our program, and there are 18 categories for medals, mostly in the younger and older age groups, so that you are competing with your own peer groups. Our youngest 5K participant, 5K, in 2011 was 4 years old. And our oldest was 89, so there's no excuse not to come out. And I see I've got the yellow light, so I will wrap up. About 23% of our runners come from Seal Beach, Los Alamitos, and Rossmore, 29% from Long Beach and Huntington, and it's a very local event with over 53% coming from a 10-mile radius. So again, April 21st, sealbeachrun.com, and by all means, let's all shop and run walk local.
Great. Thanks, that was good. All righty. Any other comments? Time is up. We're going to move on. Now, anybody else? Come on up.
Good evening, council members, and I'm here to talk about the great success that the city of Los Alamitos had on the 25th of February at the race on the base. That, I believe, was the 31st consecutive race that the city has sponsored. In recent years on the base. Before, it used to run through Los Alamitos and Rossmore, and people get lost and all that kind of stuff. But this was terrific. I have been involved with 29 of the races. The first one I was not involved, but it was clear that the city needed communications. And as an amateur radio guy, why, I got a bunch of other hams to join me, and we have staffed the race course with amateur radio operators ever since. And most recently, in the last 15 years or so, it's been done by the Los Alamitos Seal Beach RACES, Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service. RACES has a special posture in amateur radio. The federal communication identifies people who make the commitment to join RACES. In major emergencies, when the federal communication shuts down all radio transmissions, RACES members will still be here to communicate. And so we use this race on the base as an annual exercise, and we have other exercises throughout the year as an organization. Anyway, it was the best race of the 29 that I've witnessed because the city did a spectacular job. The city manager, I'm sure is the foundation for that, but the city staff was great. The Parks and Recreation Department was wonderful. The Public Works guys were great. Everybody was great, and we put out 12 people for this race on the base, and several of them had been operating in previous races, and they just thought this one was the greatest that they've ever witnessed. So anyway, congratulations and thanks, and hopefully I'll be here to see you next year.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, that was a great race. You know what? We love Angie. We want to be able to give her credit as city manager, but I think I'm going to have to say Corey this year as the new Parks and Recs director. I think also did an outstanding job, and Angie has done a great job of building that team, and so we're very proud of everybody. Thank you. Anybody else? Hi, John.
Well, John Underwood, LATV, Mayor, members of the council, just to put an asterisk on Mr. Rothwell's comments, it was a great day. We finally had good weather. And from a television production standpoint, that means a lot to me. I had my trial by fire a few years ago in the pelting rain that covering race on the base. But so this was just a wonderful walk in the sun and run in the sun for everybody. And for those few individuals unfortunate enough in town or around LATV land that were not able to attend Race on the Base. Race on the Base is now running on LATV in prime time almost every day of the week. So please, by all means, do check it out. And we did a a very seasoned and professional interview with Mr. Lakin to start the race off and to head us in the right direction for that hour-long program. So if you missed Race on the Base out there in the audience, in our viewing audience, you can catch at least highlights of it on LATV running in prime time for the next few weeks.
Great. Thank you, John. Anybody else? With that, I'm going to go ahead and close oral communications, move on to register of major expenditures. Do I have a motion?
I'll move approval.
Move for approval. Do I got a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Graham. Aye. Councilmember Kusumoto.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tempo.
Aye.
Mayor Edgar.
Aye. Next up is the consent calendar. All consent calendar items may be acted upon with one motion unless a council member requests separate actions on a specific item. Would anybody like to pull anything?
I'd like to pull item A.
Already? Gerri?
If no one is going to pull item D, I will announce now that I will be abstaining from voting on item D because I have a conflict.
Okay. Great.
Is that correct? Did I do that right?
Except you need to say what the conflict is.
The conflict is that my husband and I own property in Old Town West that would be affected by what is done here.
Great. Thank you.
Motion to move the remainder.
All right. There's a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
I with the abstention on D.
Noted. Next up, item 8A, Gerri, approval of minutes.
I just want to go ahead and Wendy asked it noted for the record that I'd like to see the minutes return to its former format for informational purposes historically for the city and for the people of the city. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Mayor.
Okay. Can I get a motion to move the minutes?
I'll approve. Move to approve.
Did I get a second?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose?
No.
All right. Next up, we move to item 9A, discussion items. Item 9A, consideration of reduction in the utility users tax. City Manager.
Yes, Mayor Edgar and council members. During the last council meeting and before the council meeting, we had a mid-year budget review. And several of you raised the issue of reducing the utility users tax for the next fiscal year, starting July 1. The staff recommendation on this is to delay consideration of this due to flat revenue projections for next year. And let me tell you several reasons why I'm making that recommendation. You all heard in the mid-year budget review that revenues are expected to come in about, for this year, into close of year this year, about 60 grand less than projected budget. Expenditures are expected to come in $100,000 less than budget, and we are projecting to end this year at a surplus of just over $25,000. That's good news. We also have healthy general fund reserves. It's projected at the end of this fiscal year that we will have about $7.4 million in our reserves, representing a 66.1% coverage of reserves to expenditures. That's all the good news. And while everything looks healthy right now, we have done some preliminary projections for next year's budget, and that is next year starting July 1. As you know, the city has three main sources of stable revenue: property tax, sales tax, and utility users tax. So utility users tax is definitely one of our highest sources of ongoing general fund revenue. So if you put the revenue aside for a minute, we've already projected that personnel expenditures are going to go up at least 4% for next year, and that's, here it is, March 5th. We haven't gotten into a great deal of analysis, but we know that rough figure right now. We are just starting the typical budget process for next fiscal year, so things could change. Usually there are increased expenditures with just almost everything. Not to a great degree, but that's just the way things go. So with that being said, we already are projecting a deficit for next year. Revenues, there are no clear identifiable sources of extra revenue next year to cover the projected expenditure deficit, or the deficit, the budget deficit. So at this point in time, March 5th, I'm recommending that this be delayed or tabled, or just, either one of those, until we can do more analysis. And I thought you might ask what a typical resident, either in an apartment or a single-family home, pays in utility users tax if that tax were be lowered by 1%. So we put some figures together today. A 1% savings for UUT for an apartment dweller would be the equivalent of $1.50 a month. A 1% savings in UUT for a single-family home would be about $3.80 a month. Now these are, estimates, but Anita generated those. So given that scenario and where we are today, that is my recommendation. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and Anita is here to answer those as well.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring that back to the council. I'm going to let everybody in the council make a couple comments, and then I'm going to go ahead and open it up for the public to provide some input. Councilmember Mejia, you had brought this item forward. I'd like to give you the opportunity to go first if you would like.
I appreciate that, Mayor.
Sure.
Thank you, staff, for the report. I know that in the staff report it says there are other options, but they're not fully vetted yet. Do we have any idea what those are looking like? On page 2 of 3, on the bottom paragraph, last sentence, staff is preparing several budget options for council's consideration, but those options are not fully vetted yet.
Right.
Is that with regards to this issue?
It is. We are looking both at, on the expenditure side, how we can reduce expenditures, and on the revenue side, about how we can generate more revenue.
Right. Okay.
But like I said, this is the time of year that we get fully engaged in the budget process, and that
we can address
that's all
it then.
about. Yeah.
Okay, well, here's the way I looked at it. We're on the next item, we're wanting to give back, I would say, substantial amounts of money for people who are looking to do repairs or upgrades to their homes and their businesses. And while I think that's a great idea and I support the agenda item, I think that it only gives back to certain people. And that would be the contractors for Los Alamitos, the businesses that sell things for upgrades for homes. And then, of course, you'd have the residents and the businesses that would be the recipients of it. But it's a small group of people. In these economic times, I think that we need to do something, even if it seems very minimal, to give back to everyone in this community, because the reserves are kind of like a savings account. And if we're taxing you and we have $7.4 million, which is 66% of our total budget, when the average city has about 10%, you can see how excessive the amount of money we have is. So I thought for a simple give back of one time, not that we would be reducing the rates over the future years, just one time give back. And I appreciate, I would have liked to have gotten the numbers with regards to the 1% for the apartments and the single family home, but it's all it's all important, not just in the give back, but also for what the people's perception of what this council is doing for them. And we're trying to look out for this community, and in tough economic times, come up with ideas that are going to make your life easier. We're talking about property taxes are going down, then sales tax is going up. We're having sales tax on the next agenda item, which we're talking about providing $167,000 for that agenda item, whereas to this one, this would give across the board. We talked about with the trash contract, and this isn't to be controversial at all, but we talked about how it's just a little bit of savings, but it's still some savings. That's why that contract was better than maybe a lower contract. Well, I think the idea applies in this instance too. When we have the opportunity to look out for the residents of this community, no matter how small, I think it's a great opportunity for this council to address this and embrace it, I hope. And I'll go ahead and hand it back to you.
Great. Thank you. Who'd like to go next?
I'll go.
Okay.
Angie, I want to thank you for all the work you put in on this, and especially when you came out with the figure that apartment owners would be saving on an average of $1.50 per month, and single-family homes, $3.80. And again, this is something that all of us have been behind. And no matter what the amount of money, I think it's just the idea that we are finding a way to give back to the community and to make them feel more comfortable that we are running a really tight ship up here. And, you know, it's just, I have to look at it, and overall, it's a wonderful idea, and I want to follow through on it, but I also want us to be able to rely on the city manager and the finance manager to come out with all of the right information on it. So I don't mind tabling this item until you can come up with a better way. And in fact, I encourage you to find a way, you know, for us to be able to do this for our community. And I encourage you to keep working at it. And I appreciate all the work you put into it so far, because I don't think any of us are going to give up on this one. That's all.
Great. Thank you. Marilyn.
Yes. You know, over the years, the utility tax has always been kind of, well, not kind of, but kind of, a thorn in my side. Originally, I was against it because the residents didn't have a chance to vote on it. It was just imposed. And then several years ago, the residents did have a chance to vote on it. And I supported it then because it is such a large part of our budget. When you break it down, and I had done that myself at my own home, I went through all of my bills for a whole year, and I felt that it was worth the return, what we could do for the community, each one of us. But we have been very, very frugal in the past 3 years. We've brought our budget from a deficit into a nice reserve. And when you look at what's happening in all of the other cities in this community, in Orange County, and, well, in California, a lot of cities are looking at bankruptcy. They were not looking at the end of the road. They weren't being frugal. They didn't look at saving, and we did. So I think, yay for us. We did a good job. But I also think that people in the community need to know that we care about these very difficult times. And maybe $3.80 a month or $1.50 a month isn't a huge amount of money, but it is an amount of money that is being given back. And I'm looking at not finding another place for revenue to backfill this, but I'm looking at our reserve to backfill this, because I think that that's what we need to do. It would make a little dent in our reserve, but we're in good shape. And we do have, I appreciate everything that has been said about the report tonight. We know that we have some expenses coming up and some increased costs, but I think that we should put this thing separate and look at it as coming from a one-time thing. I don't believe in going into reserves to make your budget balance. I think that's a mistake, but we have a good reserve, and there are certain things that come up where a one-time expense, we just do this for 1 year, warrants doing that. So I would be in favor of that. I will go along with the remainder of the council if we want to defer it to the budget session, or if we want to do it right now. I'm up for whatever the rest of the council wants to do.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Kusumoto.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, staff, Anita and Angie, for this report. I do favor the giving back of or reduction of the utility tax whenever possible, and I do understand the fiscal reality. But the one thing that I would really like to have us consider, and that's coming up before, I guess before the end of June, is a 66% reserve to expenditure. I've asked the prior city manager that we should probably have some kind of reserve policy. I don't know that we have one that's established, but I was looking at things that are going on in other cities, notably Santa Ana, and I looked at their reserve. There was a report about they should go out and adopt a reserve policy because they're in very dire financial straits. We're, like as Marilynn says, as Mayor Pro Tem Poe says, we're in very good shape. Good for us. We've been very fiscally responsible, but I'm wondering if 66% is too much. How much do we really need? Because that is our money and the residents, the citizens, the businesses, and how can we help them? And as Ken Stevens said about it's not a lot, but I think it does show that we are trying to look out for them. And I don't think we should be growing our reserve, and I don't know that that's what would be happening by these utility taxes. But let's face it, folks. We're looking at water rate increases. We're looking at electrical rate increases. Gasoline has gone up. I don't know if gas tax figures into the figures here, but these are percentages that are going to go up correspondingly, proportionally for the city. So I think we can try and help the residents and the businesses as best we can. And it may be a little bit, but I think it's something that we ought to really take a good hard look at. Now, not to make a rash decision now. I do want the city staff to go back and take a look at this a little bit closer, sharpen the pencil, and then maybe again bring it back to us and have some kind of a rough out of a reserve policy. Because how much is enough? How much is too much? And then I think, as Mayor Pro Tem Poe said, that we can look at using the reserve in a way that benefits the community as a whole and reduces the expense on all of us in these difficult economic times. And again, couple of that with the next agenda item that maybe we can get something going for us, get this spark going, get this critical mass rolling, and maybe turn out to something really good for the community and for the city. With that, back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you. Before I open it up to the public and we have a further dialogue, just a couple thoughts I have is that I think this is a really good initiative that was brought forward. Just to kind of dispel or to, I'm the guy that's the numbers guy up here that really focuses on this. And so the numbers that were kind of presented, the $150 for residential or renting, folks that rent, to $380 for homes. You multiply that out times 12 times, however many homes, et cetera, you come to a value. And then you must assume that the difference between that value and the $330 that's in the staff report must be the business benefit. But there's two things we're talking about here tonight, and I think it's really important. And Councilmember Mejia will correct me really quickly if I'm wrong on this assertion. But the first thing we're talking about here is to basically give the taxpayers back their money. This is a policy that we put in place to build a reserve through our budget process. I'm not disagreeing with Councilmember Kusumoto on whether we have a balance or a policy for reserves, but we actually do have a policy for the reserves and how we separate the reserves into two factors: a reserve balance that's restricted and a non-restricted. And what I believe Councilmember Mejia was proposing here was to really start focusing on the non-restricted, which is discretionary. It gives the council the capability to, at our discretion, to utilize that, and that was a halfway or a give and take couple years ago when we were really struggling with this big bucket of money and we were trying to see it get spent down, and we were struggling to try and find, hey, are we hoarding, our reserves? $7.4 million in reserves is a lot when our budget's about 10.8 per year. That's the numbers that everybody talks about. But when I first got on the council, I met with Tom Mock, who's the CEO of the county, and sat down with him, and I said, hey, look, we're super small. What's your idea of optimum reserve balance? And he says 25% of your budget. Then I talked with county supervisor, a couple other folks just that are used to bigger budgets, and said the same thing. And so prescriptively, they've always said that, the restricted part of the reserve balance should be probably at a minimum 25% of your balance, because usually your short-term reverberations in your budget have to be overcome. 25% statistically helps you maneuver through that. Reserves aren't set up to, on an ongoing basis, fix a problem. They're there to either invest in capital improvement projects, fixing the street out here at Chestnut, fixing the streets throughout the community, capital improvement projects that actually have a longer term life. But what we really tried to do is make sure we weren't using the reserves to pay the short term bills. What this is somebody used the word stimulus. I think that what this is, it says, look, we've done a really good job at shepherding up to $7.4 million in reserves. We have a non-restricted or unrestricted reserve balance. We should be able to spend that down if we choose to. Right now, all of us up here on the council, we're very involved in different areas, whether it's in the apartment area, our single-family homes, the businesses, and the message is consistent, which is our community is still having a tough time. And I think really what Councilmember Mejia has put forward here is a way to address, to say, hey, look, it's proposed to be a one-time temporary adjustment to the utility users tax. It's a one-time adjustment down for 1%. If we were talking about this in a longer term, that would be a lot different discussion for me. But I don't see this being a thing that I would focus on for just a current year budget problem. This item also, so let's separate the two items. So we're talking about what are we going to do with the reserve? And then we talked about, the city manager says, hey, we've got some budget problems coming up in 2012. Another part of this council is we've always been focused that we try to have no structural deficit, meaning our revenues that we make every year are enough to cover all of our expenses. And this council's done a great job and that's how we did it. We balanced the books to have revenues equal expenses, and then the staff has done a great job and even brought the expenses in a little lower, and that's how we've continued to chip away to build up this reserve. But it's time in this economy, I believe, to do something here on a temporary basis and to really evaluate this. I'll be very interested in public input on this, but I'm leaning towards favoring this because I think it gives the people, the taxpayers, back their money in a very tough time. And I also think that, it's not the amounts that, you sit back and say, wow, $1.50, really? And it's $330,000 potential hit. But the reality is, raising taxes, lowering taxes, it's the little amounts multiplied by lots of people, multiplied by months, that become big amounts. So I understand staff's hesitancy for supporting this. But I also think this is one of those areas where the council, who are elected by the people, have got to sit back and say, hey, look, what's in the best interest for everybody in this community? The other thing that I think we got to be conscientious of is if we support this, the utility users tax 1 year adjustment, $330,000, what we're saying is we are going to use the restricted or unrestricted reserves to pay the bill for a year. That means that we potentially will chip down that $7.4 million by $300,000 if you believe the staff report, and basically we're giving the people back their money, and at that point we still have adequate amount of reserves. We're now, instead of being 66, we'll be somewhere at the high 50s, low 60s, but we're still okay. And I think if we were ever going to do that, you start building up a reserve and it gets to a point, a lot of people always look at us up here and they go, what is the difference between the two factions? You guys are always battling on stuff. One of the main principles that I think that we've always debated was, that money that's in the reserves, should we be holding on to it and saving it for a rainy day until it gets just so big, or is that the people's money and we need to kind of give that back or invest it back in the community? I think this is a great first start at trying to find a middle ground on that, and it's at the right time during the economy. So, I'm going to go ahead and open it up, for public input on this. But like I said, I think that, this is a pretty good plan. The other thing is that tabling this item, I'm not sure. I'd be open to that too if we want to talk about that. But I would really like to hear more specifically what we would hope to achieve. This one's a fairly straightforward, in my perspective. It's a math problem, and it's one that we can work through, but I'm open. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to public comment. Hi, Pete.
Hey, guys. You're probably all sitting there wondering, what's Pete here to talk about today, right?
Are you trying to get money for Parks and Rec?
Right. Well, you know what? In my capacity is sitting on the Commission for Parks and Rec, okay, for going on 9-10 years now. I have seen this staff, the councils, even the ones before you, and this staff go to extreme measures to cut cost. Extreme measures. We've had layoffs. You have employees that are furloughed on Fridays. If I need to go in and get something done, sometimes there's not a lot of people there. And you know what? That's fantastic. I mean, we live in Orange County. It's a conservative town, and even the liberals that I know are fiscally conservative. And so we totally appreciate that. And we really appreciate that. But what we're talking about is a few dollars a month. And I'm wondering, I have some neighbors in here and I see them all the time. I'll tell you, the one thing I've never heard them say is, gosh, I wish I had $3 more on my utility bill this month. Yeah, we could all, the gas went up enough last week that it would have eaten up our $3 in one gas fill up, okay? We're talking a pretty insignificant amount of money. What's not insignificant, and what I would like you all to consider, okay, is what makes a community. What identifies Los Alamitos as a brand and as a community? I have seen this city cut back Christmas decorations on the streets. You drive up Los Al Boulevard, Seal Beach is decorated. Hawaiian Gardens, for Christmas sakes, is more and better well decorated than Los Alamitos. And then you head east, and Cypress is well decorated. We've given that up for the sake of fiscal conservatism, okay? We no longer had Band in the Park, an event that meets the community. The community members from Apartment Row, I would go there, I would take my parents there to enjoy a nice Sunday in the park to listen to some band music. No more budget constraints. We celebrated last year our 50th anniversary, and I'm proud to say that I sat on that committee, and we did it at zero cost to the city because we were given $5,000 and told, but you better not spend it. These are the things that make a community. Our parkway, that strip of land going up Los Alamitos Boulevard, beautifully decorated over by the 405 on the section that belongs to Seal Beach. It hits ours. God bless Public Works. I think these guys, like I said, go to heroic measures. It's not pretty. Those plants that we have up our section that go up Los Alamitos Boulevard are not pretty. Then you get to Hawaiian Gardens, and it's beautiful. I don't know where they're getting all their money from. And I'm not saying that we need to plant, $1 million rose bushes and palm trees. But come on, these are the things that make our city. Today, I walked my dog over to Orville Park, and I've got Little League teams practicing there, and they can't hit the ball because there's so many gopher holes and grass overgrown that they can't have a successful 4 or 5 year old kids. The basketball court there, I've seen nicer basketball courts in the bad parts of Los Angeles. This is the things that make our quality of life and make a community. Now, if you're telling me that, people are struggling, they need these $3, I would say, you know what? take into account that money that the staff is saying, we may run into some deficits. And if we're going to go in and give something back to the community, let's give them back some of those things that used to make Los Alamitos great. Let's give them back. Let's give a little bit more money to the public works so they could work on those parks so that those kids aren't going to twist an ankle at the park at a gopher hole. Let's beautify the center islands. Let's hang some Christmas decorations, guys. Come on. We're like the poor bastard stepchild of Northwest Orange County when it comes to the way our city streets look. We have banners on Catella Boulevard only because somebody went out and did fundraising for it. Everything that we've done over the last few years to beautify or do something, that 50th anniversary courtyard, we had to go out and find sponsors for. Step up and start investing in our community and what makes it a great place to live. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Okay, and something that's going to shock you, I disagree with the council, all of you, and I agree with Pete. First of all, this thing we're going to be talking about next, actually investing in our home increases the value of our home. You may have noticed home sales prices dropped. We invest in our homes, those prices come back up. When we add square footage, add new bathrooms, and when those houses resell, they resell for more, maintaining our tax base. That's just a financial reality of why the next thing you're going to talk about is a really good thing. I agree, giving somebody $18, well, that would have been gone. That's not even a meal for a family of four. One of the things that was mentioned was the amount of our reserves. Fred Freeman, when he was mayor, he and I disagreed on many things, but we agreed that the reserves were very important. I'm the kind of guy who, when I refined my house to get my mortgage rates down, I put money in instead of taking money out. Because fiscally conservative, as much as I am the town progressive, I am exceptionally fiscally conservative. And I am a very big believer in cities being fiscally conservative. And it makes me exceptionally proud when I hear about all the cities having problems to know we don't have financial problems. We've taken care of making sure that when a park becomes available, we have the money to buy it. That's what that fund is there for. Those one-time, oh my God, this is a really great opportunity purchase. And we've done a phenomenal job at maintaining it. And I am very proud of the councils for, as long as I've been here, since Fred and I discussed it, building it and maintaining it, it's phenomenal. I love what you guys have done there. I'm going to throw a monkey wrench into this whole giving them back. I'm going to propose you guys, instead of giving back 1% in tax, give every single resident a $30 chit to be used for any rec center activity. That's a heck of a lot more than the $18 on the tax, and it gets them back involved in our city. It puts them in our rec center taking a program, and our rec center is a phenomenal city resource that we never spend enough time really looking at. And here we have an opportunity for every resident to come in, here, I've got my $30 chit, I'm going to take dance lessons. What a great way of saying to our residents, we want you to be part of our city. So I'd like you to reconsider, table this until Angie and her team can put together all the numbers. But maybe you should reconsider rewarding the residents of the city by making them a bigger part of it. And a $30 chit will cover most of the classes that the rec center gives, am I right? And we'll cover most of at least one class. What a great way to say, be part of it all. Be part of LA, be part of La Salle. We're saying shop local, be part of this community. We want you here. Thank you very much for your time. Have an outstanding evening.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments? Good evening, Richard.
Good evening, Richard Murphy. I'm in agreement with the other two speakers for a different reason. Warren brought up the fact that maybe this isn't the time to do this. I would much prefer a thorough, open discussion at the time that the full budget is laid out, so that the fireworks and everything else that Pete mentioned that could be done in the city is all put on the table at an equal time. Mr. Mayor, if I understand your numbers, this equals 3% of our income. This 1% tax, the tax represents 3% of our income, which is $330,000. That's 3% of the income just to give out what quite frankly feels like a feel-good tax, like we're doing something for you. You're basically patting me on the head and giving me a lollipop, saying, here you are. I'd love to see the full discussion where we talk about the things that we're not doing, what we could do, and I firmly believe we could have a real discussion of what the level of the full surplus would be, and maybe figure out if we could reduce it, how then do we improve the city and go that way? But I'd be against just a one-time carving out of this money for this purpose. I'd much rather see a full discussion of everything. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Alrighty, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and bring it back, and we're going to go and have a further discussion with the rest of the council members. Councilmember Mejia.
Sure, what a popular idea already. Listen, whatever the community wants. What I'm saying is this next agenda item was for a very select group of people. And there are people who already have money because they're able to upgrade their businesses or their homes. I know a lot of people who are struggling. I know people who are losing their homes that live in Los Alamitos. So my hope was to make it easier on everyone across the board. Not that just a select group of people who already had good income could benefit from this, but just the everyday man and woman. And I guess my hope was, as this next agenda item also, if we gave the money back, that the people would spend it in Los Alamitos. And yes, it's a nominal amount, and if we want to look into spending it on something else, that's fine by me. But I just want to make sure that I go on record as saying I did attempt to make sure that everyone benefited, not just a small group of people with the next agenda item, which I support also. It's, shop in Los Alamitos, and it's a good thing for this community. I just hope that the majority of people are not feeling left out when it comes to the benefit. That's all. So, Mayor, I'll go ahead and pass it back to you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Stevens.
Wow, some good input, some very good input. And, I've got to, I'm going to stand on what I think I originally said, which is I'm just wondering if we've explored every possible avenue that we could on doing this. And I like Mr. Ivler's comment about some sort of a voucher that could be used back for the community or with the Parks and Rec, whatever it might be. I also appreciated what Pete said as far as the Christmas decorations or even holiday decorations at different times. We are very much sparse when it comes down to that, and we've cut a lot of things back. We don't know what the next race in the base is going to be. We don't know how we're going to come up with the money or what the budgeting is going to look like. The same way with when you mentioned about Orville Lewis Park, you're right. That's something that has to be addressed. Those are our precious resources out there, our children now playing ball. And if that park isn't maintained correctly, then we're doing something wrong. And that's not in our intent in any way. I also would like to ask staff, and again, I'm leaning on, I don't want to give up on any of this, and I also would like to know what really is the impact to our reserve, especially the discretionary reserve, if we come up with any one of or a combination of all of these different options for our residents. And I do know that that's probably going to be a lot of staff work and staff time. But right now, I'm of an opinion that I want to see our residents get something back, whether it's a monetary cutback on the utility user tax, or if it's some sort of a voucher system, or something that they can really see in the community where that money is being used for the benefit of everyone. So I would encourage staff right now to find a way to make it all fit. Simple as that. And I think we can be creative enough to give something back to our residents and still increase the services to where all of our residents can, again, live by the original brand that we did have. As Pete said, this is the community. This is a good community with great people in it. It's a small community, it's a loving community, and it's a community that's concerned about each other. Let's find some way of reestablishing that brand the way we should. So I'm gonna leave it at that, but I would encourage us to find a way to make it all fit.
Great, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Poe.
Yes. Thank you for your comments. We now have a real touch of reality. I think that we were on the right path, wanting to do something for the community. I totally agree. I asked this past year, how much would it cost for Christmas decorations? Because I know that we don't have them. And a lot of people in the community notice that, not just myself. I've missed Band in the Park. Some of the traditional things that we have had, we do have the movie in the park, which is similar, and I know that a lot of people did attend that, but there's a lot of things that we have done, and I would not disagree that our medians down the boulevard don't look maybe the way they should. So having listened to everyone, I think it is a good idea for us to have a real good conversation with the community. Maybe we, when we're in the budget process, we dedicate a specific time and invite, well, everyone in the community is already invited to the budget process, but most of the time, very few people in the community show up. But maybe we could advertise it a little bit and say, you know, the council would like to hear, the staff would like to hear, what is it that's missing? What would you prefer? Would you prefer a utility tax refund? Would you refer even, say, a percentage of a discount on the park and recreation programs? I do think that it's time that we look at that and include the community in those discussions. So I'm certainly not against doing that kind of a thing.
Great. Councilmember Kusumoto.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So on listening to the input from members of the public, I do appreciate them stepping up and certainly I think broadening the scope of this, and I want to thank them. What Mayor Pro Tem Poe had said about Christmas decorations, I know that's been near and dear to her heart. She's asked for it, and there just hasn't been, we felt, money in the budget. But again, I think, as Mr. Carvajal had pointed out, it does seem to be something that, let's look at everything. And as Mr. Murphy had said, let's put everything on the table. And I think we've got a chance to get some measure of input from Mr. Mendoza's outreach on the general plan. I don't know, not that necessarily to be any kind of deliberate way of capturing it, but if there's a way, maybe, Stephen, that we can get some input as to what are the near-term things that is affecting the or valuable to the community, that might be something that would be good to feed back to us. And again, as Councilmember Stevens said, I think that we ought to look at everything, and perhaps this is not the exact time. I do like the idea that Mayor Pro Tem Poe said about getting more input from members of the public, and maybe that'd be something, a workshop type format that we can make it less formal, and we can really just roll up our sleeves and have some good, honest dialogue, and then, as Mr. Murphy had asked, put everything on the table. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I kind of would want to see this thing, let's kind of massage this a little bit more and let's see where we go with that. That'd be my preference, my choice.
Thank you. All right. I also very thankful for the input that we got. It's interesting, Pete and JM, is that, this is an inflection point for the community because, this is the crash of really two financial philosophies trying to find its way forward, and this is a very healthy discussion. And I think that we got to look past, it took a lot of courage for Gerri to bring this thing forward and say, hey, look, it's interesting, deeper in that philosophy is, if you don't trust the council to make the decisions, whether it's about pride, which is, maybe where Pete's at, or whether it's about community involvement, which is where JM is at, is push people into the community and use the money to kind of do that. Then you go with Gerri's idea, and I am supportive of that too, which is you give the people back the money and say, okay, look, you guys can do a better job than we can. So I think really the essence and spirit of what Gerri was trying to accomplish there is, let the people make the decision on their money. But, when you see it's a little bit across a lot of people, it's not a lot of money. And through this dialogue too, let's recognize and claim some ground, and let's also kind of not just be nice about it. I want to push up into you, Pete, a little bit, because one of the comments that we're making about, hey, we need to invest in the community, and yours is about the pride. I've been the hardest guy up here about focusing on structural budgets that actually revenue equals expense. And no matter how good we feel about this philosophy, what we're talking about is reserves and doing something very special for the city. And you know what, for first in a long time, I think we get the comments and everybody's interested in playing. But down at the deep, every year on year, there's a structural deficit problem. We don't make the amount of revenue we do to be able to support the expenses. So you get prudent revenue projections that are conservative, and you spend up to them and you spend less, and it builds a reserve. And through conservative revenue projections and belt tightening, we've been able to build a reserve. Pete's perspective, if I don't take it out of context, is stop tightening up so much because you guys are consistently conservative and it's starting to show, and we may need to do something about that. But I would still argue with you, Pete, in a very friendly dialogue, is that I think that what I'm struggling with is the structural deficit problem is still there. Gerri's idea of a one-time shot, I think what I'm open to now is to put the infusion, whether it's a community formed during the budgeting process and put it in pride, in the community process and put it in community involvement, but do something with I think everybody's on board. But the revenue problem, when I see 330,000, I think 3 police officers. And so, so when, if somebody says, well, Troy, look, your big premise is no structural deficit, so spend what you got. I'm going to pick the 3 police officers every day over the Christmas decorations. But now we belt tightened, and we were conservative, and we belt tightened, and now it's a bigger reserve. We probably do need to make some adjustments. I'm open to that personally. I don't think this is a bad discussion. I don't think anybody's been wrong, but I think it's again, it's part of us now coming to terms with what are we going to do. When we talked about our mid-year budget review, we also talked about, look, there's infrastructure challenges in this city hall, whether it's a phone system, stuff the community doesn't see, that we've kind of put cars that probably do need to be replaced, where Tony Brandenberry is sitting there with like duct tape in one hand and wire in the other going, come on guys, how much longer do I have to do this? But so I think where I'm at, and I'll kind of open it back up to wherever the council wants to go, but I'm supportive of reinvesting the money in the community. I think that's what Gerri meant. I really do. I don't think the process that we're talking about is unreasonable. I think the budgeting workshop, when we get into that workshop, be careful, because you guys are going to see some of us are already focused on the budget numbers, and we've got real structural problems coming up. $200,000 to $500,000 of problems of agreements we've put in place, things that we've signed up to, that it'll be easy for us to flinch and lose the conviction that we have tonight. And so, yeah, with that, Pete, I mean, I don't know, and when, absolutely, please.
I don't think any of us that stood up would say, hey, let's go spend it all in Vegas, right? I mean, seriously, I mean, we all take great pride in the fact that this community has done what it has to build up the surpluses, and people that lived in Rossmore when they went through their bankruptcy, it was really damaging to them when the county went through their bankruptcy. So by all means, to a certain extent, I guess my point of view, if I could phrase it a little better, is that taxes as a whole are somewhat of a collective investment on the part of the community to that community. It's a collective investment that we all make. So my point that a couple of bucks a month, from the standpoint of, for one person, God, man, that $1.80 doesn't even get you a burger at McDonald's anymore. But collectively, if it gave us something like improvements to the parkway or Christmas decorations, things that affect the entire community. That's kind of the collective part of paying your taxes, is that reinvestment in the community. And you're going to give me $3 a month. Like you said, I'm going to probably pump it right back into the gas tank is probably where it's going to go. But gosh, you know what? If I see those Christmas decorations go back up, I mean, we almost lost the 4th of July, the celebration for the greatest holiday for the greatest country. We almost lost that a few years ago. And I'm saying that's my point, is that, don't get me wrong, I wasn't saying stop and start spending like crazy. By all means, I want the focus to stay on that conservative, no deficits. But if we're looking at kicking a little bit back, let's look at what we've already done, what we've already sacrificed as a community, and see if maybe as a benefit to the community, those might benefit more than a couple of bucks a month.
Yeah.
That was my main point. So.
Okay. And I guess as to put an input into this, and then again, I'll open it up to see what type of motion comes out of it, is that I think that if we were going to look at something like this, we would probably look at going into the budget process. I think what we're talking about is trying to develop a, I don't know if it's a community pride or community involvement fund that we would fund. I think that we would try to establish a policy or criteria that says you don't start something that becomes another operating expense year on year. Sustainable community pride is probably something I would be supportive of. And again, I won't get into the selection of what it is we pick. Clearly, I'm in it. I look at it a little bit different, but I think the policy, I feel comfortable that if we don't saddle the city for a longer-term annuity problem that comes every year, when I know Angie's got some hard news that she wants to break to us in a month or two when we have our discussions, I would support the policy of using that towards this Pride project, and I would support if the staff would bring back, if this becomes a direction that we go, a policy that's very structured so that we don't get crazy, but it's something that maybe it's heavy on the community involvement on choosing what it is, because I would give that up more than I would give up we create the annuity, and allow us as council members to decide the policy and let the community help mold what the projects are. I would be supportive of that. That's all I have for input. What is the pleasure of the council?
Mayor, if I may.
Please.
What I'd like to do was, as I said, the intent was for everyone to benefit. So I appreciate the ideas that both or all three of you came forward with. What I'd like to do is ask to have this money set aside that we've designated in this agenda item, and that we send out a survey so that everyone gets an opportunity to weigh in on it as to what their preference is. Some people might want community pride. Some people might want the Parks and Rec. They may want different things. So if we could work together to come up with some kind of a survey, send it out to the people, let them weigh in on it. That way everyone gets a piece of the pie, and then we can take this money and use it to do the things that we talked about here tonight. Absolutely supportive of that.
So, Councilmember Mejia, the survey that you're talking about, just again, not to be the wet blanket on the cost.
That's fine.
I mean, we've done everything with JM's sign up here that with the community. Yeah, I'm just joking. The web-based, a survey online. How extensive are we? We've already vetoed a survey earlier in the year. So what are you specifically suggesting? And is it something that you would be able to find a middle ground to be able to get to before the budget workshop, which I'm not sure what that timeline is?
Sure. I mean, I'm not looking to have the total say. It's just an idea. I mean, we could do it on the website. I'm happy to walk the community and deliver the flyers like we did for the sign to give everybody an opportunity to weigh in, because not everyone's on their computers. There's a lot of people who are were my parents' age and didn't really utilize their computer very much. So whatever you come up with is fine with me.
Yes, and then
whatever's most cost effective, obviously, because you want the bulk of this to go into the ideas that are raised with the community.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Mejia. Any other comments from you, Gerri, at this point?
No, that's
Okay.
it. I'm sorry, Mayor.
Councilmember Stevens.
I have to pretty much agree with all of the comments made about community feedback. I really don't want us to do anything unless we have the correct community feedback. And, I just want to see us do them all. I want to see us be able to supply the services and show some sort of an impact back to the individual residents within the community. And I have to agree, let's find the most economical way of getting that feedback that we need. And some of the feedback could come from the website, and like Councilmember Mejia said, possibly a flyer that could go out to the community. And I'll be honest with you, I'll even walk the community and drop off some of those flyers. And so that's not anything that's above any of us up here. That's the only way that we're going to get that one-on-one feedback that we need anyway.
Great. Mayor Pro Tempo.
I had to look at Pete there for a minute because he was.
You guys have a commission that's built around Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Affairs. You've got citizens that are sitting on that commission that would be aching to give you their feedback on what the community would want where it comes to beautification, cultural affairs, concerts, parks. That commission has 7 members that you've appointed to give you advice. That's a much more effective and productive use of the time than, and God bless you guys for wanting to walk the neighborhood, but you've got a great commission there that's willing to give you that advice. I would recommend you send it to them and get their feedback.
I appreciate that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ken. Go ahead.
Since I still had the floor and didn't give it back to the mayor.
All right.
Thank you, Pete. You're right. No, you're absolutely right. And I think that's something that we've got to look at too, and possibly throw it back at them and let them be the spearhead on this. I don't think anyone would be more in tune with what's going on in the community than they would be. So again, thank you for that information. Now I'll pass it back to the mayor.
Gerri, did you have one comment on
No,
the
I thought
report
Pete
that's
was
launched?
talking to me when that's why I responded to him. But
Okay.
but the truth of the matter, I'd like to see a survey because I understand Parks and Rec does a good job, but it's 7 people out of an entire community. So while you have a heavy involvement with the Parks and Rec, there may be other things that people want to see around the community that are different from what maybe the Parks and Rec would focus on. So I appreciate the idea, though.
All right, Mayor Pro Tempo.
I have a question. When does the next recreation brochure go out?
It just went out.
I know that the spring one just did go out. When does the summer one go?
The summer one typically goes out around Memorial Day weekend, so the end of May.
So the end of May.
Too late.
Would be too late then, because that would be the perfect time to put something in that goes to every home, and where they could have maybe a tear off where they could send it back that wouldn't be cost us a lot.
We can come back to you with ideas, whether it be using the commission to design the survey, putting it on the website, doing some mailing. I mean, it could be a combination. It should be a combination of methods. So
that
we
would
can
be
do
what I
that.
would like to see.
I mean, the brochure is the obvious one because it's mailed to every household.
Yeah.
But we missed that deadline.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'd like to see the staff come back with. So, I don't know. You're looking for a motion, or do you want to?
I'd like to hear Councilmember Kusumoto, and then I absolutely am looking for a motion.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I do think that Mr. Carvajal has a great idea in terms of the commissions. And I would suggest that not just stop at Parks and Rec, but there are however many other commissions. The Traffic Commission, I know where I served, there were capital type projects or one-time projects that needed budget. And not that I'd want to go out and necessarily spend it, but I think that just needs to be looked at. As Mr. Murphy said, put everything on the table. TV Commission, there are a lot of things that LATV wants to do, and how can we help them be more effective, and would this infuse that there? So I think lastly, as Mayor, you said about sustainability, I would like to see this focus on one-time type projects, not something that we'd have to go back and keep feeding year after year. So that, I'd favor that too, is that if it's a one-time, let's do this right type of thing, or have a model that will sustain itself. Where is the revenue stream that comes in to pay for Christmas decorations? And I'm not against them, but again, as we found out, the investment that the community, the city made in the Christmas decorations that we have, it went to waste because we didn't use them, and the Christmas decorations were not reusable in their present state. So that was just an unfortunate thing. So let's look at how we can make sure it's sustainable or it's a one-time type of expenditure to do good for the community. With that, back to you, Mr. Mayor.
So we have an opportunity here that we could table this, that we've been able to give direction to the city, or would it be more appropriate to try to formulate a specific action? Because I do think if we're going to start to commission the commissions and forward staff into this thing, it might be helpful to have it an approved action, but it's up to you guys.
I think we have enough direction. I don't think that you need to take action on the item before you.
Okay.
And just to make sure that we're all clear, we heard the desire of the council, and, you know, I just want to be sure here so that we can get to work. The desire of the council is to survey the community about their desires to put let's call it a list of one-time community pride or beautification or some kind of list together that deals with those types of projects on a one-time only basis going forward. We haven't really, I mean, we've identified the $338,000, but I haven't, you know, are we talking that amount of
Set that
money?
aside.
Mhm,
I mean,
set
I
that
thought
aside.
that's what we were talking about, was set it aside. If we don't end up using it after we do the one-time wish list, I guess, if that's what you want to, we can always go back into the reserve.
I think use it as a planning assumption. Then we
Okay.
can always come back. You can find a better list. We can change it or
Right.
whatever. But
And then we will fold this into the budget process and make sure that we have workshops and outreach that cut across the community so that we have everyone's input that wants to give input. And then bring that back to you as part of the budget process for final decision-making.
okay. And everybody up here is committed to look at this as totally separate than our structural problem that we're going to have.
Yeah.
So that we don't get caught up and lose our conviction. Alrighty, great. I'm going to go ahead and move that on. Next item is item 9B, adoption of the Business and Residential Improvement Program. City manager, or are you going to pass this off?
Pass it off to Stephen.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Speaking of building a greater Los Al, before you tonight, we have the Business and Residential Improvement Program. The program was first introduced 2 weeks ago at the City Council meeting. The program reimburses building, planning, and driveway permit fees, and the reimbursements are equal to the money spent locally on construction-related materials. Again, it was a two-component program, if you recall. I want to remind some of the residents and people at home that weren't watching 2 weeks ago that the first component of the program rebates fees for improving your property. Building permits, planning fees, conditional use permits, signage, site plan reviews, and driveway permit fees. The second component of the program offers and incentivizes local spending by making sure that your receipts are reimbursed when you purchase your products for your building project in Los Alamitos. How it works, here's an example, is the homeowner would pay $2,500 approximately for a remodeling permit. He would come to the counter and have the permit issued. Then he would start his construction. His contractor himself would start spending money throughout the community, Econol, lumber, maybe some flooring or lighting. McNally Lighting is one of the lighting places. South Coast Supply is another opportunity where they could spend money. And let's say they spent about $2,140. And then $2,140, because that is what they spent locally, would be rebated to them upon completion of their construction projects. Eligible improvements are roofing, room additions, improvements to businesses, water heaters, solar, Another conservation measure is changing out your windows from some of the older double sash or double hung windows to some of the newer windows they have. Again, tenant improvements for businesses and facade improvements for businesses. That's just an example. There were a few issues that we had brought up during the council meeting 2 weeks ago. I wanted to explain some of those issues and how we approach those issues and change the program or alter the program to represent those issues. They're fully explained in your staff report. Issue 1 is that the thought that the architect cost should be reimbursable. Architect fees, although a pre-construction cost, they're a service. They wouldn't generate sales tax locally in the same way that flooring, hardware, lumber, or water heaters might. So we want to exclude those from the program. And they're also pre-construction. Many times you're spending those monies before you are issued a permit. Issue number 2 was to track the receipts for the sales. Staff will incorporate a tracking worksheet into the project's spreadsheet to track all receipts by various retailers. We'll do it by retailer so we can have an ongoing cost. We'll also have a copy of every permit submitted to our department as backup. Unused programs fund should go back into the general fund reserve if not used. Staff has incorporated this into the program rules and guidelines to make sure that occurs. The 4th issue was that sales tax generated from the program should go back into the program fund for future years. Sales tax generated from the program will be tracked and monitored as the program, but we're going to leave that up to the council to decide what happens with those monies during future budgeting efforts. We don't want to freeze those monies at this point. Issue number 5, an appeals process should be incorporated. Staff has incorporated an appeals process within the program guidelines, of which you could appeal to the city manager at no cost to the applicant. We didn't want to have a cost to appeal a decision that the community development director may have made in regards to reimbursements or rebates. Program should incorporate a penalty of perjury clause. We have done that. We've inserted it. The city attorney has blessed that. We've placed that on the application, which is the last part of the program guidelines. Issue number 7 is the establishment of a program term. The initial term will be 1 year, but we want people to complete their projects within 18 months, so we're not having a bunch of money hanging out there. Issue number 8 was the establishment of start date. We're still on board to want to begin the program on the 15th and for the last 1 year. And issue 9 was the maximum should be established, and the maximum we're recommending is $3,500 per property. We don't think people are going to spend that much money. We don't think the average rebate's going to be even near that amount. Issue 10, an ad hoc committee should review. We've established the owner certification. We've established an appeals process and to include it as some of the safety measures in the program. We've held a focus group of the city manager, myself, the recreation director, city engineer, the building inspector, and the Chamber of Commerce president to incorporate some of the safeguards and develop a marketing program. We feel that's we've done enough to hopefully put the safeguards in this program. We'll certainly leave that up to council's, see if council agrees with that. Again, as a reminder, the program, what it accomplishment, it incentivizes property improvements, it reduces the cost of construction, it reinvests in the local community and encourages local buying, and it maximizes the recipients, maximizes the number of recipients. The terms are built into the program unless otherwise directed with the start date, the funding, the per limit, and the first come, first served basis. 18 months you must be reimbursed by. The school fees, sanitation district fees, utility fees are not included. We can't reimburse other people's monies. We've talked about fees for pre-construction work are not eligible. We've also stated and placed in the rules that the city staff and elected officials are not eligible, and that unused monies from this program shall go back into the reserve. It came from the reserve, it should go back to the reserve. And the program decisions that we make as administrators are appealable to the city manager. With that, we have before you a resolution for adoption to formalize the adoption of the program and to formalize the guidelines that we've written for this program. And with this, we'll leave it up for discussion for the city council tonight. And with there's a couple of recommendations is to adopt the resolution for the program. And we're open for any discussions that council may have.
Great. Thank you. Again, what process we're going to go through is we're going to go through the council, open it up to public discussion, and then bring it back and close this one way or the other. Councilmember Kusumoto, do you mind if I start with you?
Not at all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Stephen, so thank you. So some of the concerns that I had, I think you've addressed, and I want to appreciate that. The one thing I was kind of hoping for, but I'm glad I didn't have to, was be part of an ad hoc committee to actually do some kind of a peer review of something on this. But I think that the things that I was concerned about, I believe you've got them addressed. I do like what you've incorporated in there. And then, although we did talk about something similar to this, I think it was back in November, right? There was some other parts that I'd like to dialogue with you with the city manager's permission, that how we might look at some other ways to help members of the community. But I do like this, and I thank you for incorporating those changes into the program.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Poe.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I think we've heard from members of the community that this is a win-win for everyone. I would like to say that I guess I disagree a little that this is just for a select few. We have an awful lot of rental properties in our community, and it may be the opportunity for a property, for an owner of rental property, to make some upgrades, especially with windows, and that would directly affect the gas and electricity bill of the tenant in being able to lower their bills, and I think that the tenant would be very appreciative. So I'm not looking at this as just for a select few people. I think that there's many, many people in the community that would benefit from this. I think you've done a good job of incorporating all the questions that came up last time, so I'm all in favor of it.
Great. Councilmember Stevens.
Quick question, a couple of them, in fact. We said that we were going to be keeping this money in a separate fund, and would that cause any problem by having an additional fund to go along with all of the other funds that we have?
This would be tracked separately within the general fund.
All right. All right, so it's still working out of the general fund
Right.
and not just a separate fund standing alone?
Right.
All right, good. Another question on, you mentioned that you went through to find out if, and to assure that you've done every safeguard possible through this system. And we also mentioned the cost of the plans being a service. Can we legitimately separate this out of this? Architectural drawings and so on. Is it fair to take that out because it is a service?
Yeah, I feel that all of the measurable reimbursements are coming from sales and, for lack of a better term, widgets purchased in Los Alamitos, something that's tangible, inspectable, and touchable.
Right.
Architecture, time, and materials is a little bit different than that. So we thought by removing that from the equation, we're going to clarify. Someone who does architecture plans is going to pull the permit, and they're going to do the work. So the reimbursement will be on the materials they use. They will still be entitled to reimbursement. It's just not for the architecture plans.
Yeah. The reason I ask that is because so often people will have an architect do a beautiful model of a remodeling of the house, and then never completely follow through with the construction. So you feel comfortable with excluding that?
Absolutely.
Completely?
Yeah, I feel that the program is safer for not doing that.
Okay. I guess the last thing that I have is, and I don't know if we have the stats on it, but I was just reading an article about a week ago that home improvements right now are up throughout Orange County. And so whatever's happening in the economy, people are realizing that they still have to maintain and improve their homes. Do we know right now for the city of Los Alamitos, are we higher this year in permits being pulled or in the last couple of years than in the previous 3 or 4 years?
I've only compared to, all the stats we developed for this were 2011. If I took February of 2011 and compared it to the end of February in 2012, we are down.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's another reason to go ahead with this. Thank you, Stephen.
Councilmember Mejia.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things for the council to possibly consider. In the agenda item last time, Stephen, there were different cities that had done similar things like this. And what I'd like to ask for the council to consider is doing a percentage for residents, 60%, businesses 40, or something along those lines to keep the opportunities proportionate to, residents to businesses. Also, on page 2 of 5, you have number 5, it talks about reimbursements within 18 months of the permit issuance. Is there any kind of special, say something's going to take longer than 18 months, does that mean that they're just disqualified if they haven't been able to get to that point?
Well, we've incorporated an appeals process. So if somebody really had a difficulty with the rules and regulations, there's an appeals process built in where the city manager could render a decision. She'll use common sense in making that decision and it'll disconnect it from me. So
Right.
there'll be no bias in that decision-making process. It's rare for a project to go that long.
Okay.
If it is, it's a code enforcement problem already. And it won't be the first issuance of a problem. A building permit expires after 6 months if there's been no recent inspections. So this program builds in 3 6-month periods in
Right.
the 18th month. So I think it's generous.
Okay. Just if we could, city manager, keep that in mind, because if someone does run into something legitimate where they need a little bit extra time, I'd like for us to make sure that we take that into consideration, maybe give that to them. Are we going to make any special allowances if there's something that someone's trying to purchase for their upgrade that it's not sold in Los Alamitos, or are they just kind of out of luck?
They're out of luck.
Okay, all right. I would like to make a recommendation that we take it from $3,500 to $2,500 to give more opportunity. I know that was discussed at the last city council meeting. And then on page 5 of 5, under program appeals, it says 10 days of the, they need to respond within 10 days. I'd like to see that extended, if the council is supportive of that, to a little bit longer, 20 to 30 days, just so that they can get all of their paperwork and anything that they would need for their appeal together. And those are my recommendations.
Right. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and at this point, I'm going to open it up to the public comment. So if anybody in the audience would like to come forward and comment on this, we'd really like to hear from you.
J.M. Ivler, yet again. As I said last time, I am fully supportive of this program. I think it's a wonderful idea. I think it's a great way to get investment in the community. Thank you very much, Stephen, for including the give back to the fund. I did not see the piece that said that any sales tax runs back into this, though, but I can live without that. I'd like to again point out that when people start investing in their homes, home prices, as we all know, have dropped. It's affected us. People are saying they want their taxes and their assessments redone because they're not as much value, and so on and so forth, and that affects our tax base. This program has the potential to help bring our tax base up and maintain our tax base by people investing in their homes. I know that Mayor Edgar is more interested, as he stated, in investment in the business and the storefronts, but when it comes to our homes, they're not just the hovels in which we live. They are also our biggest investment in our lives, usually. And I think that anything that has us reinvesting in our homes and benefiting from it, and at the same time benefiting the tax base and the local businesses in our city, is a very positive thing. And I look forward to seeing the program implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hi, Dean.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Dean Gross. I'm a resident in Los Alamitos. Just want to clarify, because when I read the staff report and what I'm hearing might be misconstrued to the average person in the community. And the staff report says that the program reimburses building, planning, and driveway permit fees equal to dollars spent locally on construction-related materials. The example being a homeowner pays $2,500 for a permit for home improvement. He does not get that money back, based on what I'm being told, and you can clarify that. However, if he goes out and spends construction materials, in this particular case, equal to $2,140 in local materials, those receipts can be submitted and through proper forms with the city, and then they're reimbursed $2,140. So in reality, there's about a $350 shortfall, if I understand that correctly.
If he spent more, he'd get the full 2,500 back.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just using an example that not everyone would spend the full 2,500, and some might.
Okay.
Yeah, you're certainly entitled to the entire amount of your building permit up to the ceiling that the city council approves tonight, only when reimbursed by the receipts. If you pull a permit for $2,500 and spend no money locally, you will not get a refund.
Okay. So the refund is not on the permit. Essentially, it's on the cost of the building material only, not labor.
Well, correct. But if you hired a contractor, Eddie Keskin Construction, and Eddie spends money on your house in Los Alamitos, and he has receipts from Ganal, those receipts can be used for this program.
Okay. Sales tax on the receipts at 7.25%. Is that deducted from the receipt, or is that included as part of the reimbursement?
Included.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Great. Any other comments? Okay. With that, I'm going to go ahead and bring it back. Anybody else on the council want to make any other remarks? I did hear two recommendations that were very specific that Councilmember Mejia brought forward. She is wanting to talk for a few more moments about the ceiling of the $3,500 to the $2,500 amount. I think we've kind of argued to try to make that an amount. Is that correct?
It was just something, I know we had brought it up at the last meeting, and one of the council members or yourself, Mayor, may have said, gives more opportunity for people because obviously if they're only 2,500 instead of 3,500, that's 1,000 extra that can go accumulatively to someone else who might want to apply for this. And we do, I think if we're thinking about extending this, as we talked about last time, the more people that it can affect the first time, I think is good because it gets the word out. Then if we want to increase it going forward, we can always raise it if that's what the council is interested in. And again, they're just recommendations that I felt strongly about, especially with the 60-40 residence to business or some other kind of combination. I know that was done by one of the other cities, and I feel strongly that I'd like to see the residents get a little bit bigger share of this.
Okay. So Councilmember Mejia has framed up her 2,500 versus 3,500 issue. And the second item that I also noticed was the appeal time period, to put your appeal in order, extending the time period from 10 to 20 to 30 days.
Right.
What I'd like to do is get some feedback from the council before we frame this thing up and give consideration to what Gerri's talking about. So does anybody have any comments, feedback on the two recommendations of lowering and then changing the appeal time period? Mayor Pro Tem Poe.
Yes, Stephen, what is, I think you put in there somewhere, what is the average permit?
Actually, let me bring you up the slide I used last time. These are the averages of 2011, last calendar year. The average commercial permit issued was 774. The average permit for single family was 234, and the average for the apartment owners was $433. Those were the averages.
Okay, so we're not coming anywhere near a $2,500.
No, but a full remodel of the Midway house right here, that was 2,065, and McDonald's is up at 11. Those are the high ones.
Oh, I see. I see. Okay.
To build a new fourplex, it was $4,100.
Okay.
So we use something in between these two.
In between. Well, why don't we just do a happy medium and make it 3,000?
Okay, so your recommendation is the 3,000.
Yeah,
So we'll just see what other comments we get.
Yeah,
And
make it
any opinion on the
3,000.
appeal?
And, you know, theoretically, I think 10 days is good, but I know that when you're trying to get paperwork together and everything, and those 10 days can go by really fast, so I would not object to making that, say, 20 or even 30.
Okay, so you're open to the
I'm
recommendation?
I'm open for that.
Councilmember Kusumoto?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, I guess I don't want to try and micromanage too much of this
Yeah.
thing. I do hear the concerns of the other council members, and I appreciate those. And kind of, I'll go with what the will of the council is. The one thing I do like though is, and perhaps Stephen, if you can help us, a 60-40 split, 60% towards residents and 40% towards businesses, commercial. How do you think does that kind of track with the permits over the not over the last year, but just anecdotally, just without facts and data off the top of your head? Does that seem about the right mix?
More permits were issued for single-family residential than any other category.
Okay, so the 60-40 would make more sense, I think, to the benefit a broader range of members of the community.
It would.
Okay.
However, if that 40% is not touched by the business community, it means the residents can't touch it either.
Right.
I understand.
If you're going to cap one segment and then cap the other segment, it means there's no crossover.
But again, I think at that point in time, we can take a look at that and see if there is a compelling need to change the limits, and then
Yeah, and prior to that, we would bring
I
it
think
back.
these would be just protection, so it doesn't get rated in the first month because people are just waiting for this thing to happen. So I'm in favor of that with a chance to go back and revisit it if the need arises. Back to you, Mr. Mayor.
So you're in favor of the 60-40?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Councilmember Stevens?
We're stepping off in uncharted waters right now. I don't think this has ever been done in the city before. And to be honest with you, I like the compromise between the 25 and the 35, 25 that Councilmember Mejia recommended, and the 35 that staff recommended. But I think 3,000 also would be a good amount to be able to use on this. And again, it's just to get more participation in the program. I do agree that the appeals time at 10 days, that's far too short. And so I would go along with the 30 days on that. And this is something that it's almost got to be a living document that we can move back into and make constructive changes to as time goes on. Again, this is something that's hasn't been done before, and I would like to see us continually review it and find the best ways to perfect it. So those are my two recommendations. I'm not too sure about the 60-40 split right now.
Okay. So I would have supported to go to 3,500. I think it was my idea to push higher. I would go and support the compromise at 3,000. On the appeal, the 30 days is fine with me. The 60-40 split, I think, in the essence of what I was hoping to be able to get done with this project or this program was bigger things. And so I guess with that mindset, I go kind of unconstrained. It's a chunk of money. I would like to see, kind of first in, first out, and kind of let it sort itself out. So I would say on the split portion, I'm probably more open market, see who comes in and adjust. I would rather, and I think I said this before, I'd rather adjust the amount allocated to this program up if it becomes wildly successful and cover more people than to constrain it up front. But I would also say that if this was something that would withhold a unanimous vote, I would fold on it, because I think if we started to see this being a problem, we could always go back and fix it. And so I'll support the 60-40 coming in, just because I think it would be a symbolic move that we can. I think we all agreed we would come back on it. So with that, I'd like to try and get a motion if I could.
like to make a motion that we go with staff recommendation with the changes that we agreed on tonight, the 60-40 split, 60 for residents, 40 for businesses, the compromise of the $3,000 per property, and the 30 days for the appeal. And I appreciate the constructive dialogue back and forth. And that would be my motion.
Thank you, Councilmember Mejia. Do I have a second?
You know what? I'm going to second that because I think it's generally the right thing to do for all of us.
Okay, just a point here. Mayor Pro Tem Poe.
We don't have anything in here that I can see as to when we will revisit this. I'm not really in favor of the 60-40, but if we will revisit, if we put in the motion that we revisit this within a certain period of time so we can see how this is working, then I could support that.
What about 6 months halfway through? Get a feel for, who's really utilizing the program.
That's fine.
I would, if I can add, I think so. Modifying the motion, all I want to modify on top of that is 6 months, or if the 40% is exhausted, I think we want to not wait for 6 months. I think we would want to sooner.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, so I accept the modification of the motion and the modification of the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're going to move on. Okay. 9C, developer-initiated ballot measure in the City of Cypress. City Manager.
I'm going to turn this over to Stephen. This is an update for the council and the community.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I apologize for the quality of the slide, but it's all we could get our hands on. It kind of represented the location and the layout of the proposed project in the city of Cypress. The city of Cypress in 1987, the voters approved what's called Measure D. It created some land use controls on some open space area and some areas that zoned PS for quasi-public and public land use. It's the same zoning that was in their school sites as well. Today, a developer has received enough signatures to get this on the June ballot to try to get some of those uses and designations of that area changed. If he can get those changes approved by ballot, he will apply to the city for this development. So he hasn't applied for the city to the development, so we don't have great detail of what he's proposing. It's a company known as Continuing Life Communities. If any of you are familiar with Morningside in Fullerton on the corner of Brea Boulevard and Baston Cherry, it is very similar to that, and it's the same company. It's a place where two spouses could live at two different terms of their life care needs. One could be very active and one could be in an acute case of Alzheimer, but not live miles apart. They would live together on one site. This does also include a 3.8 acre health center and a 6.5 acre office park. So it's not just all healthy living communities, it's also some office park area that could potentially have some retail on it. The breakdown is in the top right corner on this. The major concerns is how this will impact Los Alamitos. As you know, we have a few settlement agreements to start reviewing, and if this ballot makes the measure, we want to make sure that this doesn't compromise some of our old settlement agreements with those areas. So we'll be watching those closely. We'll be watching the ballot initiative closely. And Cypress has already worked with us cooperatively to try to share as much information as they have on this project with us. And we'll continue working on that with them. It's a fairly new method of going to the ballot before you apply. It's something that's not usually done, but they're frozen based on the old Measure D. We will provide updates as we learn information, both through the weekly and through future council agenda items to update the city council on the latest and greatest information, probably right after the ballot.
Great. Thank you. So let's go ahead and bring it back to the council. Does anybody have any comments or questions on this project? Just to remind everybody, I think that the council, what we've tried to do with this item is just to keep people informed, if you go to Cottonwood Church, you hear about this project because they talk about they're actually the survey and are putting out the signatures, and they're trying to help their neighbor there. But it also that area has been a little bit volatile over the years, and maybe a little. And so I just I think that it's good that we had it. So what I think is the most important part of tonight, on top of council comments, is from the public. If there's any comments, this is a very constructive, non-threatening way to collect information. From our side or our perspective, and be able to put it into the public process as it goes forward. This project looks like it's something that's pretty far off in the future if you consider the ballot measure, then to go through the process through the city. But this is the time that, as a city, you should get constructively involved and actually try to help either support projects like this or influence them to kind of help so that they're congruent with our community. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and bring it back, and I'm going to start with Mayor Pro Tem Poe. Do you have any comments?
No, I just appreciate the staff report.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Mejia?
Yeah, really quickly. Stephen, on the page where we have the diagram, it says 3-story units. Do we, I know that when they put in the Marriott, there was a lot of issues with the neighbors there. Is there any effect that we could have on that just by reaching out to Cypress and saying, if the residents there feel like they're going to be negatively impacted, is there some kind of representation we could play?
There certainly will be once this becomes an application in front of their department, a formalized application after the ballot measure. We certainly will respond, much like they did with our medical center EIR.
Right.
Once we see all the facts laid out and the impacts laid out, we'll be able to comment using real information instead of speculative information.
Right. Well, I would like to say that moving forward, really hope that we stay on top of this, because Rossmore, as you know, was very upset about some issues that are past the point of where they can weigh in on them. And so I appreciate that this is coming to us early on, where we can keep it in our sights and have any kind of impact that would benefit our community. Stephen, when they change, if they're successful and they overturn Measure D, is there any potential that this property would not be developed this way and it would be developed more as retail? Because just for traffic issues, I have a lot of people, who are concerned about the traffic there now, and they know that Cypress has talked about for years now developing that completely. If D is overturned, could this eventually turn out to be something that would have a greater impact than this?
Well, I think this has a great impact. I mean, there's over 100,000 square feet of office and commercial uses on the front of it. It does have the potential to have impacts for our community as it's laid out now.
Right.
I don't think the ballot measure has to pass to predict what they're proposing. This is this applicant, though.
Right.
If Measure D passes, could this be a bait and switch? I mean, that's always possible.
Okay.
That's
that was
always
my concern.
possible until they file an application with the city. We don't know the full extent of their development.
Right. Well, I learned early on from our mayor that he was concerned with regards to the DeVita and the melting pot, that maybe that was not a legitimate coupling coming forward. So when I saw this, and I just know that Catella is so heavily impacted that there are other uses you could put there that would draw more cars throughout the day continuously. I mean, if you look at Costco and the kind of traffic that brings, if we were to put something else, or they were to put something else other than this, there could be far greater impacts on our residents. So I appreciate your input, and I'll go ahead and pass it back, Mayor.
Great. Councilmember Stevens.
I know it's a little premature, but I'm trying to figure out by the map, where is there going to be traffic impact and where is it going to hit?
Well, residential generates less traffic than commercial, and senior residential even lesser than normal single-family detached residential. So until we have the breakdown of how many residential units are in here and how many are age-restricted and what types of occupants, we won't be able to run the actual numbers. We're going to have to wait for an application to be filed with the city of Cypress to actually get that information. But you are going to have traffic impacts on Enterprise. You're going to have traffic impacts everywhere because this is currently vacant land. What the extent of those impacts are and whether they can be mitigated are not foreseen at this time.
Yeah, I guess my biggest concern is if you extend the map just a little bit farther to the left, you would see Lexington, and I think Lexington would also have significant impact, as far as traffic goes, or whatever traffic is going in and out of that development.
Well, if you remember when we reviewed the hospital in our town, we took that very seriously, and we studied 35 intersections miles away in our community. You're going to see that kind of scoping of a traffic study for a project like this as well. And then we certainly will comment on any environmental document that's circulated, which could potentially increase the number of traffic signals studied.
And a possibility of traffic mitigation?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would be one of the biggest concerns. Because again, it looks like no matter how you cut it, we're going to be dumping more traffic onto Catella. And it's already overloaded as it is. And since this is nothing that has really any bearing at this point on us, and you're just bringing it to our attention, that's all I have.
Great. Councilmember Kusumoto.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I echo the concern about traffic, and I do realize it is premature to talk about it. But the structure on the corner of Enterprise and Catella, again, is that the medical or the office?
That's the office right here. It's called an office park.
110,000 square feet. And we don't know what kind of usage it's going to be.
Not yet.
And then showing right to the east of that, all those notional parking positions.
Yeah. Well, this is the existing hotel.
No, in the drawing area.
Oh, yeah.
That's parking, right? I mean,
yeah, these are all parking spaces right here.
Parking, yeah. So
as I go along here.
And so I think, I guess we'll see when plans are firmed up and what the potential impacts, and we'll have, I'm sure, the neighbors, our neighborhoods to the south of that will have some concerns. That office building is going to be how tall though? How many is that going to be 3?
Yeah, it's proposing to be 3 stories tall.
Yeah, okay. And again, that I think was the concern of the neighborhood to the south, where some walls were put up to block sight lines. So I imagine that those will be concerns as well. So ways to mitigate that. Okay, well, that appreciate the information, and we'll just keep watching it. And thank you. Back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you. Before I open it up for public comment, I think that, again, this is information only. And, I always, just like at the shops at Rossmore, we got to think about what we can actually influence and what just makes us feel good to talk about. And really what we're talking about here is the ballot measure. And the ballot measure, that could be a prison. It could be anything in there once it gets approved to go past the land use that it's set out for. So I think I wouldn't get too hung up on what it is as it's shown. It's that's to kind of get it past the ballot part. It's the ballot part. You've just got to be willing to accept that that's going to be something different if the ballot passes. So, I think too is good neighbors with Cypress, and we've really tried to continue to build a relationship. I think if any of the public has comments or feedback on something here, be specific, and because I think that this again is a good part of the process to be able to get comments to them so they have an idea kind of what we're thinking about. So with that, I'll go ahead and open it up to public comment. No public comment? Alrighty, we're going to go ahead and check public comment and bring it back to the council. I think at this point, unless anybody's got some dying comments they'd like to make, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to receive and file.
Second.
Okay. Any questions, concerns with that? Okay, we're going to go ahead. I don't think we need to take a vote on that. Next up is item D. 9D, consideration of withdrawal of the prosecution of the alleged Brown Act violations and cessation of hostilities. City Manager.
If I may?
Sure.
I would like to ask if we could table this this item because of some information and some things that have happened over the past week that I think we need a little bit more information before we move forward on this.
Okay, so we have a recommendation to table. Before we just do that, let me just get some quick comment. City Manager, we haven't gotten any feedback from you. I think we all know what this item's about. Let me just collect a little bit of feedback. Marilynn, let me kind of put forward too is that on our agenda, we have a closed session coming up.
Right.
Possibly, to me, this item's an important one. And I think that there's been some things that have happened even since we've put this thing on the agenda that I just don't. I just want to make sure that we calmly kind of go through. Maybe as I don't know if it's a substitute, but something to think about is if we're tabling it, can we table to potentially go into closed session? This has to do with Brown Act violations. The Brown Act violations have to do with the trash contract.
Right.
The Brown Act allows us we're going to go into closed session potentially to talk about the lawsuit. Is that correct, City Attorney?
Yes, the closed session is about the lawsuit.
And I think the things that you're talking about that were received over the last week were consistent with the trash lawsuit and some of the concerns with that. So, City Attorney, would it be out of line to, if we did go down the path to tabling it, though, to be able to come back tonight if we can just have a discussion in closed session about the legal issues?
You can just rearrange the order of the agenda items, if that's what you're talking about, and take this up after the closed session. The closed session can't address this item 9D. The closed session is only about the trash litigation, but yes, we can switch the order.
Okay. Let me open it up to the rest of the council.
That would be fine with me.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments for us doing that? Okay.
No.
We're going to go ahead and move into closed session, and we're going to talk about the trash litigation. So I'm going to take a break, and we'll adjourn, and we'll reconvene as soon as we're done. This council meeting back into session. We had ended off, we just got out of a closed session to talk about the trash lawsuit litigation, and we're coming back into back out of closed session to come back to 9D, which was consideration of withdrawal of the prosecution of alleged Brown Act violations and cessation of hostilities. Start with the city manager.
This item was placed on the agenda, and staff recommends that the council discuss and provide direction regarding the possibility of withdrawing all threatened pending action regarding Brown Act violations. So there are 4 pending Brown Act matters. And rather than go through those are all listed clearly on your staff report. Matters 1 and 2 are within the city council's control. So again, this is an opportunity for the council to discuss and provide direction regarding Brown Act violations.
Great. Couple things. So again, we'll talk a little bit about this. We'll also open it up for discussion from the community.
So point of order, I do believe I need to recuse myself since it does involve me on one of the items. So with the council's permission, I'm going to recuse myself.
Sure. Okay. So just to kind of get this thing started, to talk a little bit. So the Brown Act violations, what we were trying to accomplish, I think, in this action item was to be able to realized that as a council, this had gotten elevated to a point that was really starting to have a significant impact on our ability to move things forward with the city. I think that, we'll go ahead and start and kind of go to each council member. But I think, again, I think the essence of this is that there's some items up here that specifically can be dealt with by the city council as far as items that we have jurisdiction over as outlined. But I think that even more importantly is really the essence and spirit of what we're trying to accomplish here, which is, to try and put a lot of this longstanding feud, battle, whatever you want to call it, behind us. So with that, I'll go ahead and bring it to the council and see what other comments, feedback I can get from the rest of the council. Who'd like to go first?
Just as I need a point of clarification.
Sure.
Do any of the rest of us have to recuse ourselves from this?
Well, wouldn't we take it one at a time? I mean, Warren recused himself, obviously, for the number one.
Well,
excuse me.
I understand why Councilmember Kusumoto recused himself, and I think in a way these are all interrelated, but there are no prosecutions on 2, 3, or 4. So I don't think there's anything that involves a financial conflict of interest as to those. The item number 1, I think, was different than the others because the council had previously authorized a prosecution. So it's at a different stage. The nature of the proceeding is different.
So you see nothing in item 3 or 4 that would cause any of us to have to recuse ourselves?
I don't see any financial conflict of interest. As always, you each have to make your own decision about whether you think you have common law bias, whether you have the ability to be fair and impartial about this.
Okay.
In item 2, demand for a cure by Roger Ho on behalf of member Kusumoto, has that not already been taken care of?
The council, in fact, prior to Mr. Ho making the demand, the council had already taken action on that. And we have sent a notice pursuant to the Brown Act saying that we don't believe there was a violation, but if there was any, it was already cured, and so there's nothing left to be done. As far as I know, that's the end of that one. We haven't heard anything further.
Okay. So it seems like we're at a procedural point here where we need to kind of bifurcate this issue a bit. So there's 4 items. It sounds like Councilmember Kusumoto recused himself from item number 1. And so we'll deal with item number 1 so as one item, and we'll deal with items 2 through 4 as a batch of other items, of which we'll ask Councilmember Kusumoto to join us. At that point, obviously, any of us have the opportunity to decide whether we want to recuse ourselves further at that point. But before I go any further, is there any order of preference of handling the batch 1, which is item 1, and or batch 2, which is 2 through 4? Any order of preference? Because if not, then I'm just going to go ahead and move forward with item number 1 since Councilmember Kusumoto recused himself, and it's the most convenient to deal with at this point. Okay. Yeah, no problem?
No.
Alrighty. So request for a prosecution of Member Kusumoto. Let's talk about that for a moment. Is there, first of all, any comments, feedback, anything on that? Go ahead.
Well, I will just state that I possibly had the most reaction to that. And it was not because of the substance of what was reported out, but it was, for me, it didn't matter whether it was talking about the trash contract or the color of the lawn, at the park. It was the fact that a closed session, comments in closed session were reported out to the press, and it was done deliberately. That was my initial I have just never seen it done, and I was shocked, and I've stated that before. We're trying to look at what is best for this community. I think that we have gotten to a point, this trash contract has brought our community no end of grief. And I really feel bad about that because I thought we really tried to do the best job that we could with it. And that, am I correct, Sandy, that seems to be pretty much winding down?
I don't know that I can say winding down, but it looks like we've got a settlement as to a piece of the case, and then part of the rest of the case looks like it may be moot after that. So there's still more to do, but we've seen more progress in resolving that case in the last few weeks than we had seen in the entire year before that. Right. Put it that way.
So I think as everyone has looked at what the rest of our agenda this evening was, we really are trying to do some real positive things for our community because that's why we're here. That's why we ran for election. That's why we were glad that we were elected, was because we love this community and we want to see it be the best it can be. And it can't be good if our council is constantly at odds. I'm not going to hope that we're always going to have a 5-0 vote on things. I don't really think that that's real productive either, because a 5-0 is a rubber stamp. And that means that none of the people up here are reading the staff reports and giving thought or talking to the community about things. And we're always going to have some kind of a difference of opinion. And I would like to see us be able to respect that we have a difference of opinion, take a vote on an issue, and then move on to the next one with renewed energy. And maybe we'll all vote on that issue in unison. We just need to put all of this behind us. And so having said that, I think we did get a notice today in our packet about ethics training, did we not? Now, I know that different ones of us, it's for, the ethics training is for 2 years, correct? Your certificate is for 2 years, and I think we've all done that on a rotating basis or something. So I think that it would be good for all of us to do the ethics training and refresh our memories about what is expected from closed session. And so if we could get a reminder for each one of us is if we're due for it. I don't know that everybody was due at the same time. So I would just say that from my perspective, I think we need to move forward and just try to do the very best to get along and discuss things with as much energy as we want, because we're all passionate about our community, and then we're going to vote according to how we feel is best for. That's what I try to do: vote for what is best for the community. And certainly, I said this at our last meeting. Coming to city council meetings is not fun anymore. It just isn't fun, and it should be fun. This is something that we should want to come to, interact with the staff, interact with each other, and I'm looking forward to a time that it is fun again, and that we're really, and I think we took the first step tonight with a couple of the issues that we dealt with, looking at trying to give back things to this community that's going to be beneficial. And so I guess that's all I have to say.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Mejia?
I'm going to stick with one for right now. I voted no, or I shouldn't say voted no. I didn't support the actions taken because I didn't believe that Warren had purposefully committed a Brown Act violation. And my concern now is that now there have been articles in the newspaper about this, and I have two things. I'm concerned about if we believe it's a violation, aren't we bound to pursue it legally? That's one. And then two, how is everyone going to know that Warren is innocent of this if we just drop it? Do you know what I mean? Instead of him being found innocent, there's no real ruling or clarification as to he wasn't guilty of these actions. And then it could be brought up again in the future by someone else. So I'm wondering if it's better to, well, I guess we could address Warren about it, but maybe we go forward with it because now it's all out in the newspaper. We finish up what we started, so he can either be found, innocent, or he can be found that he did create the Brown Act violations, and then we can address it then. Because Sandy, if we believe there's a Brown Act that's actually happened, isn't that our duty to pursue it?
The nature and extent of Brown Act enforcement you want to undertake is completely a policy decision.
Okay.
And there are, in any city, there are Brown Act violations that happen from time to time.
Right.
Some inadvertent and some not. And everyone has to make a decision about whether to move forward with it or not.
Right.
And I think when I presented the memo to the council, I gave a range of options, and one of them was take no action.
So, because I don't want to speak out of closed session, so are you allowed to say what we decided to do with regards to the pursuit of this? Are we allowed to discuss that out here? I don't know. The actions that were taken, that were voted on in closed session to take with regards to this matter. I'm trying to be very careful so I don't say anything.
I don't know of any actions that were taken with regard to this matter in closed session. We talked about, are you talking about the closed session we just had?
No. When we met for closed session with regards to...
I thought we waived the right and actually had this discussion.
Okay, I just wasn't sure, so I'm not feeling good, so I'm making sure that I'm not divulging any information that I shouldn't.
Do you want to take a minute and talk separately, and I can tell you?
Just very quickly. Just get a point of clarification.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure. Sorry about that. I just don't want to...
Yes, so for clarification, that was open session. The discussion that the council had and the decision that was made to convey the information to the district attorney and attorney general and so on, that was all done in open session. So you can
I
talk
just
about
wanted
that.
to make sure I wasn't divulging closed session information. So have we moved forward with that? And if we have, can we pull it back?
No, we have not.
No, we have not. Okay.
The city hired a city prosecutor to look into the civil action, but nothing was filed and nothing was conveyed to any prosecutorial agency.
Okay. So then, with regards to my question, are we bound to do anything just at a council level? And how do we exonerate him if he wasn't guilty?
No, you're not bound to do anything.
Okay.
And this is really not a legal comment, but if you'll let me, I think what you're really talking about is you have an ongoing difference of opinion and disagreement about whether there was a Brown Act violation or not. And this agenda item is talking about whether to let that go.
Well, I voted not to support this, but I just want to leave it to the rest of the council if we can think of ways, because there still sounds like there's a belief that maybe he did create a Brown Act violation, and I would like to see if we can't find a way to where it can either be proven or disproven. That's what I would like to see, so that his name can be cleared, within the community and even outside, because I believe it was in the Orange County Register, and I know people contacted me about it, so that would be my input on it.
Okay. Councilmember Stevens.
Let me give you a little bit of background on this. A couple of weeks ago, we all decided, the city council determined that it would be in the best interest of the community if all involved could set aside their disputes over the Brown Act and refocus on advancing shared goals and objectives for the city. Tonight, we had some shared goals right up here on some of the things that we voted on. And that was my concern last week, was to get over it, get back to running the city, doing the business of the city the way we were elected to do. We've had a divisive council, and the past 3 years that I've been up here, it's been fairly much divisive all along. And I don't know why, to be honest with you. Even some of the best ideas that we've had, for some reason, still found a way to end up being a split vote. It concerns me that if we carry on doing that, we're not doing the right things for the city and the right things for the community. I've heard people say, well, damage or a person's character was involved. Well, yeah, I'm afraid that's happened to all of us. You heard that articles were in the Orange County Register. Yeah, that's true. We've all had articles on us in the Orange County Register over the different lawsuits, and to the point where we've had people chase us around with documents trying to serve us with them, both at home, where your neighbors see the person coming up asking, what's that all about? Or in my case, even at my place of employment, where I had my employees ask me, what's that all about? I never expected public service to affect a person's livelihood. Well, it did in my case. And that's wrong. That's wrong. When you allow public service or the perception or the people that are supporting a lot of these different agendas that are going on to serve you at your place of employment, to where your employees and co-workers think there might be something wrong, it takes a lot of time to try to explain it. Do they ever believe it all? No. No, they don't. And so it's a difficult decision for all of us in public service as to how far and what extent we should be allowed, or what extent things should be allowed to happen to us. And it's not correct. It's not correct to do. When your children get affected, when your livelihood gets affected, yeah, there's something wrong. So if anything, at the last meeting, you heard me be the first one to say, you know what, get over it. A lot of things have happened in the past. There's a lot of people that carry a lot of grudges. I don't know why. A lot of these things, possibly animosities, whatever they might be, started before I was probably even on the council. But I do know that it's never nice to be on the receiving end of this, and I've been through about 1.5 years and 2 years of being on the receiving end of it. Does it dissuade me in any way about being a public servant? No, no. But I want to make sure that anyone else that sits up here never has to go through something like that ever again. And again, it's wrong. It's wrong to do something like that. So I think the issue that we've got before us right now is do we continue on listening to wrong actions that are happening with wrong consequences? Or do we go back and try to get it back to where we're doing the business of the city correctly? And yes, if someone makes a mistake, they've got to be able to say, you know what, maybe it was improper. And it's up to us to look to see how far we're going to push it. And, you know, I guess there's that old saying, and I can't even remember the exact wording on it, but it's fool me once, you know, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I'm leaning towards fool me once. Let's move past it. Let's try to get everybody back to where they're all going in the same direction, doing the best for the city. And I know that none of us control any of our supporters in some of the things that they want to say or do, but by our actions up here, I'm hoping that it will lead things in the right direction. So I'm going to leave it at that and just wait and hear from everybody else right now.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and open up. Anybody in the public want to speak?
Mayor, Madam Mayor Pro Tem, Council Member. As I stated the last time this issue was raised at the last council meeting, I don't want to be here discussing this. I don't understand why the council majority started down this rat hole instead of doing what city council members normally did in cases where they thought there were errors made by a council member and just talked to the member they thought was at fault about their concerns in private. But the majority did what it did. The key problem with rolling this back, as if nothing happened, is that the city council majority voted to have the city attorney spend time and taxpayer dollars to give a legal opinion, the January 17th, 2011 letter to the city of Los Alamitos from Sandra J. Levine, city attorney, and Michael R. Cobden, assistant city attorney, paragraph 1, lines 7 through 9. That report clearly indicates that the trained legal expert advising the city council advised the city council that in her expert legal opinion, there were violations of state law. Same document, paragraphs 1, lines 9 through 11. Unless the city council obtains a differing legal opinion from trained legal staff, it is, as Mayor Pro Tem Poe stated, if you choose to do nothing with these charges after having a legal opinion rendered to you that indicates that the law was violated, you are all just as guilty of that violation as the person who the city attorney claimed violated the law. As Mayor Edgar stated so eloquently, the choice is binary. A legal opinion was offered to the council, and you chose to follow the opinion, which makes sense since you were not all trained in the law or the application of the state codes that your legal counsel stated were violated. Now you are stuck between a rock and a hard place. You have overreached and opened a Pandora's box. Again, it is not my place to say why you chose to go this route, but the only possible way to unwind from where you are now is to get a legal opinion from a second source that states Councilmember Kusumoto did not violate the state law. That second source could be the district attorney's office, who states that they refuse to prosecute since they do not believe that any violations of the Brown Act occurred. This could provide the city council with an opportunity to call the entire matter up for review by the council, since a new legal opinion has been rendered, and you could agree with the DA that there appears to have been no violations, and then clear Mr. Kusumoto's name and reputation. But what you cannot do is say, let's all sweep this all under the rug, and that is what tonight's discussion looks like. Being advised by legal counsel that an illegal act took place, and with none of the council members qualified to make alternative legal opinion, you have no choice but to get another legal opinion that disagrees with the one issued by the city attorney to justify your decision to not continue to press forward with prosecution of the state law that your legal counsel has indicated, based on her years of experience and expertise, was violated. Before you claim that this is not in the spirit of détente, what I'm hoping to avoid is anything returning to bite any member of this council in the rear for doing the equivalent of not touching all the bases after a home run. If Mayor Pro Tem Poe is correct in her belief that the decision to not prosecute the law by this council is akin to being an accomplice in the violation, the pullback now from your earlier decision could be damaging to those that originally voted for the prosecution. It would not be in the spirit of these discussions for me to keep silent and see this council vote itself into potential costly, for the taxpayers, hot water yet again. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you'll consider this seriously.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Okay. So in a little bit of a different twist, it sounds like Gerri, yourself, and JM, you guys are pushing that we should just push ahead. And it seems a little bit counter, but
I was just asking if legally we can do that. I'm just trying to look out for us as a council. I'm not an attorney. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, it's interesting is that, we get a legal opinion, we listen to it, we're wrong because it gets overturned. That's a problem. We listen to it, we follow it. Legal opinions are just that. They're opinions. They're not judgments. And so I think that, the opportunity, the window of opportunity here is I look at this item number 1 specifically of this as the closest thing I could draw to in a parliamentary procedure would be a vote for reconsideration. We went through a process. We looked at what the options were. We evaluated it. We had 7 to 8 different potential things that we could decide. We picked 4 or 5 of the remedies that we thought based on what we thought the case presented, but the case was never formally presented to a body that makes a judgment. So the opinion didn't go to a judgment. And that's the right time to intercede if you want to try to stop something. Kind of a parallel path is that somebody files an FPPC violation or another type of, even this case, once it's filed to the AG or to the district attorney and they decide to take this on, it's out of our hands. At that point, it's going to go through a process that's going to have to be adjudicated and a decision will come one way or the other. I think what the essence that we tried to do here is a professional courtesy to say, look, before this thing gets out of the hands of this council, that item number 1 specifically, the request for the prosecution of member Kusumoto, really isn't one that we're sitting back trying to render judgment on whether we think it's a Brown Act violation or not. I think it's a professional courtesy we're trying to afford. I'd be the first to say that Orange County Register picking up something and making an evaluation isn't a judge, and it isn't a judgment. It's they're reporting news that they have been able to evaluate. I also say that we got to be a little bit more intellectually fair of what this is really about, because this is a lot deeper than just the Brown Act violation. It wouldn't have say withdrawal prosecution of alleged Brown Act violations and cessation of hostilities if we were really talking about the big elephant in the room, which was all of this is around the lawsuit. In the same way that you can say, hey, look, we want complete vindication for everybody up here. Some of us in that lawsuit were sued for corruption, and that thing never seen the light of day. But you know what? It went out in the community, and there was a lot of people that had opinions. That a lot of times when we have discussions up here, we can't tell where something starts and another thing ends. And I think really what this council is saying is, we can't call the ball anymore. We can't see which way the bubbles are going to the surface. We've lost the way, and this is just indicative of that problem. And so I think what we're trying to do here, again, is to afford a professional courtesy to reconsider the thought process that we had when we looked at this item for Councilmember Kusumoto. And as a professional courtesy to take a look at this, I also don't think that we've exceeded the threshold. We aren't lawyers. We basically put the thing forward and said it should be evaluated. Now we're saying, guess what? We don't think that we should do that. So I don't think any pronouncement has been made on this issue. We definitely had opinions, but again, none of them binding and legal. So from my view, I'd like to just go ahead and make a motion that we withdraw the prosecution for Councilmember Kusumoto. we look at any monetary costs he might have incurred in trying to defend this, which I think just kind of added salt to the wound. And I also say that, in the essence of detente, as J.M. Ivler had mentioned, I think that, I guess for myself personally, I'd like to provide an apology to Councilmember Kusumoto in the essence of I'd like to be able to try and see if we can move this thing forward for what it really is, and not to draw ourselves into another trap or web that we start to kind of get into. So with this, my motion is that I'd just like to put this thing behind us.
And I'll second it, just for the record. I was just asking the questions to make sure we weren't going to step into something else. That's all.
Okay. Any further comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. The next items 2 through 4, what I'd like to do is I'd like to request the city manager step back and ask Councilmember Kusumoto or somebody to have him join us. He can decide to recuse himself if he wants, but I'd like to be able to provide that professional courtesy. Councilmember Kusumoto, are you comfortable with us moving forward with items 2 through 4 with you here?
Of course.
Okay. Items 2 through 4, for the public, item 2, demand for a cure by Roger Ho on behalf of member Kusumoto. Item 3, demand for a cure by Jody Schloss. Item 4, allegations of violations by J.M. Ivler. It's a procedural part or administrative part. Item 2, demand for the cure by Roger Ho. I would just say, and I'm going to open this thing up and everybody can comment, but I do think that the item that was presented as a potential Brown Act violation was something that was actually handled previous to Mr. Ho coming and addressing the council on behalf of Councilmember Kusumoto, and it was cured. We'll have a discussion of whether that is true or not. But again, I'm just going to ask the council, and again, we'll open it up to the public. What we're trying to do here is kind of just step away from this, provide the professional courtesy, and really just kind of try to go down a path where we just get out of this type of business, because I think it's wrong. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and back out of that and open it up. And out of again courtesy, Councilmember Kusumoto, I would afford you the opportunity to go first if you wouldn't mind, or I'll come back to you later.
I'd be happy to go first,
Sure.
Mr. Mayor. And I guess just from a point of order, I do believe there are conflicts of interest, much like I had on the accusations against me. I do believe 3 of you need to recuse yourself, as well as the city attorney, because I believe the city attorney provided some advice that you can have a meeting that, to my analysis, and again, I'm not a trained lawyer, I read the Brown Act, it looked like the meeting, although it was cured, the meeting itself took place. It was not properly quorumed. And Mayor Pro Tem Poe was not in a place that was accessible to the public as required by the Brown Act. So I think that before we proceed forward, I think we do need to get that part really hammered out in its detail.
Well, hold on. So Councilmember Kusumoto, just to hit that on straight on, because it's a point of order that you've called. What we're specifically talking about then is item 2, just so I'm clear, right?
Yes.
Okay. So before anybody responds to anything other than item 2, let's stay focused in that area. Just what I'd like to do is city attorney, as a point of order, let's address Councilmember Kusumoto's issue.
So this was the meeting where there was a closed session, and Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Poe participated by telephone. It was posted at the remote location where she was, and she was at an accessible location. So that part was taken care of. The legal question that is the gray area is what constitutes a quorum under those circumstances. Without going into too much detail, quorum isn't defined in the Brown Act. There is case law about it. And I believe that it was appropriate. However, a challenge was made, and so the council revisited that. The Brown Act provides that that a city has the opportunity to cure any problem And it expressly provides, unlike, for example, disclosure of confidential information, which doesn't have that same provision, any violation of those types of procedural requirements, the council has to be given an opportunity to cure. So that's why when a demand is made, you have a certain amount of time to cure. In this case, the cure was given actually prior to any demand being made by Mr. Ho, and that resolves it. It's no longer an issue. So there's a provision in the Brown Act also that says that for the violation of this particular section, substantial compliance is sufficient. And in this case, what the requirements are in terms of teleconferencing have to do with providing public access to the meeting and the public opportunity to hear and participate in the meeting. In a closed session context, there is no public participation in that and nothing for them to see or watch. So it doesn't really matter in terms of the public's perception of the meeting, whether the council members are there in person or whether they're by telephone. And so I also think that it probably wasn't a violation because it was substantial compliance. But that's all kind of academic at this point, because once the cure happens, it's done and there is no more violation.
Okay, just to clarify, so point of order is called of whether we have an issue with a conflict going forward. That was Councilmember Kusumoto's point. Again, I'm trying to go through this to show you the respect, to make sure that we're not crossing over a threshold here.
If I may, another point of order then? Items 2 and 3 are a waste of time. We don't need to talk about them.
I would say that that's possibly true, but
that's what I heard from the city attorney. They're cured. There's no violation. It's done. Well, I think we ought not to waste time on it then.
Okay. Can I get a support on that, or?
Well,
Sure.
I would like to make a clarification, because I believe that the meeting that was referenced here, I was present here.
No, I believe that the meeting that Mr. Ho made the demand about was December 8th, when you participated by telephone. There were actually two parts of Jody Schloss's demand. One of them is the same issue, and Councilmember Kusumoto is right. It's moot as well. If you want me to address the other one, I
Well,
can.
just in the speed of, or the essence of trying to do it, Councilmember Kusumoto is saying items 2 and 3 will move forward. Does anybody have any issues with that? Do I have a second for that?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Could you rephrase the motion?
Yeah, the motion is that items 2 and 3 are closed out because they have been cured. And there's no need to go through these any further.
And I don't recall that I made that motion, so if you construed it as that, I will apologize.
Not a problem. So withdraw the second. Anybody want to make a motion for that item?
May I
Please.
just one thing?
Councilmember Mejia.
Just so that there won't be any kickback.
Sure.
The second item that Ms. Schloss brought forward is not an issue either, is what you're saying, Sandra?
Right.
Okay.
And if you want me to explain that, I can, or if you want to
Can
move
you
on.
just refresh
that's
my
fine.
memory what the second issue was?
Yes, one moment, okay?
Oh, never mind.
Um,
It's fine. I
No,
have the letter.
It's
Okay.
for the public's benefit, too.
The issue was, Ms. Schloss was concerned that on December 5th, when there wasn't a quorum, that the discussion among, between two council members that took place in the back room was a Brown Act violation. But two council members can meet to discuss an item without it being a Brown Act violation. They meet as what's called a committee of the whole. They can't take any action, and no action was taken, but they can meet and discuss.
Are we talking about two different meetings?
Yes,
Okay.
December 5th was
Oh, the
that.
5th and the 8th,
On the
okay.
5th, there wasn't a quorum, there were just two members.
Okay.
Ms. Schloss was concerned that the two members discussing it was somehow a violation of the Brown Act, but
As long
I
as
think
there's
you're all
no-
familiar with, two council members can discuss an item, and that doesn't make it a Brown Act
Right.
violation.
Okay,
So
so because
that
no
was the
action
other
was taken,
point.
it's good?
Right.
Okay, just wanted to get that clarified.
Okay, so items 2 and 3, as we've now talked about, is not a motion on the floor, but I would have to agree with Councilmember Kusumoto. I think the items 2 and 3 have been cured, or I'll just speak for myself. I think the items have been cured, and is there a motion to move those two, to close those out, so we can move on to item number 4?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposition?
I'll abstain.
And abstain, okay. Item number 4, allegations of violations by J.M. Eibler. And let's talk about it, and then J.M., if you'd like to address the council. Let me just, as a professional courtesy, anybody have any comments before we have J.M. talk about his item?
I just would, for future, just a note, if we could have the actual complaints with our agenda, so when we address them, we have them to look at, because I don't recall everything that we read up here.
Okay. J.M.
At the end of last meeting, I was asked if I would withhold on the allegations by the city attorney. I believe that was how you phrased it, so that it wouldn't formally be processed. And in the spirit of détente at the time, I agreed. While I would find it appreciative of this council to totally clear Mr. Kusumoto's name, because we have a very ugly political situation in the city. When someone runs for public office, dirt is generally thrown at them. And the last election, 3 of the candidates, well, actually 4, I'll give Mayor Edgar his due, 4 of the candidates had things said about them that were either absolutely totally false, or in Mr. Edgar's case was a misreading of what actually happened. I believe I stood here and even defended you on that. I am afraid that the city attorney's letter is going to show up in 2.5 years if Mr. Kusumoto decides to run again and be used as fact. And that is a deep concern of mine, that Mr. Sylvia and his organization will use it. And that has to be cured, in my mind. And I would hope to see the city council decide to do something to cure that. I appreciate the fact that you offered your personal apology, Troy, but it really has to be cured. Otherwise, Mr. Sylvia will use it, and it will become a political liability when there is no guilt associated to it. And my items, I am going to maintain my current stand. I will not be putting them forward to the city attorney in the spirit of détente.
Great. J.M., just a question for you real quick. So the action that we took, what I'm hoping will be utilized is the specific action that does vindicate Councilmember Kusumoto and include an apology in it that would be able to be utilized as something that we'd go through and that didn't move forward on. But is that?
I heard you apologize. I heard you state that. I also heard Mayor Pro Tempo clearly indicate that she felt that the action still had taken place and that they were violations. I heard the same from Councilmember Stevens. I don't know how we unpack the warhead from the missile, but it has to be unpacked. If you're saying détente, we really have to say Warren didn't do anything wrong, and we just misunderstood the letter from the city attorney. There has to be something beyond saying, okay, let's pretend none of this happened, because it will be used by Chucky Sylvia in 2.5 years if Warren runs again. I know this for a fact, and I can't read the future really well, but this I know. And it is a political bomb that will be held over him. And I don't want to, if you're saying there's détente, then we have to take the bomb away. somehow, I don't know how, I suggested earlier that this has to be cured in a certain way by, at that point, having another opinion that says, well, you know, it could have been seen that way, but I don't think it was. And it's not just you guys saying, well, yeah, that's what the attorney said, and okay, we don't think it was. You guys aren't qualified. I mean, you all are elected representatives, but none of you have the legal background. And I can see this being a bomb over his head. And putting my hat on as the guy who gets involved in political campaigns here, I would hate to have to try to defend it because it's a legal opinion from the city attorney on city attorney stationery. I mean, I don't know how this is as bad as a whisper campaign politically. So there has to be a cure that cures him politically beyond just we're dropping it. Like I said, in the spirit of détente, I am pulling back my statements. And I did that last week with the city attorney. I will have no problem doing it again. These used to be handled, I believe one of them actually has been, based on what the city attorney said, doesn't matter, but a whole bunch of the little ones do. And, you know, those little ones have happened before. Sometimes you guys just forget. That's why I believe Councilmember Stevens, when he was mayor, had that little card that said, always make sure you do public comments. You know, mistakes happen. We're all human. And it's about, these things aren't that important until somebody makes them that important. This had nothing to do with the lawsuit per se. This had to do with something else. And I don't know why, and I really don't want to know. But we've got to cure it so that if Warren runs again, Chucky Sylvia and his group can't slam him for this. We have to cure it so that it didn't happen. Like I said, I didn't want to be here pointing out Brown Act violations. I believe when you had the first meeting on this, Councilmember Mejia said, you know, this is the type of stuff we used to, you put your arm around the council member, you go, hey, I think you did something wrong. Don't do it again. That's where it should have ended. And why it got escalated to this point, I don't know. But we have to end it. I agree, it has to end.
Okay.
And I will be more than happy to pull mine back, but you guys have to find a way to make sure that Warren, if he decides to run 2.5 years, that 10-page letter isn't slapped up against his head by Chucky Silly and his organization.
Okay, so what we're talking about here is a little bit of a multilateral situation going on, and before we kind of cross the threshold of going back to item 1, which Warren had recused himself, and I don't want to kind of throw him into jeopardy as we are kind of going back into item 1, let me just ask the city clerk a question so some clarity of what was recorded as the action in item 1. Is that viable? Is there any issue? Because I just, the apology, although I made it personally, I made that part of the motion. I also, what we did is basically, retract this. Like you said, we don't legally have the ability to make an opinion. Your concern is more specifically the city attorney's opinion to the city council being utilized as a point of fact versus just an opinion to the council. So
the city attorney is a trained legal specialist. None of you are. That's why I said we have to get a trained legal specialist to say, that was one reading. I don't think that was the correct reading. Warren didn't do anything wrong.
So
I
don't know how we do that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the prosecutor who says
I
that.
think I need to recuse myself
Yeah.
if this is going to continue. So
I'm going to drop that. We're on item 4. You guys can go back to item 1, but for item 4, I will continue the same position I had, city attorney, which basically takes it off the table for the time being.
Thank you.
Okay, so
For the time being. Or takes it off the
Or,
table.
or is tabled, basically. It didn't happen.
okay. So let's try and fix item 4, and then let's decide if we want to go back to talk about item 1. I'm trying to get a clean fix here, so please, I'm not trying to push anybody past their point of tolerance with this item, but I think it's important. The details matter on this one. So on item 4, Mayor Pro Tem Poe, did you have a point? Or
Yes, I do,
Sure, go
because I understand Mr. Eibler's concern about the election 2.5 years, but we have an election coming up now. And my concern then, along those same lines, is I have been turned in to the FPPC several times. And is Art DeBolt and his group going to use that against me when I run for re-election? So you see, it works on both sides of on both sides. So if we're going to call a truce to this, I think we have to call it a truce all the way around.
And I think we all agree with that. Jam, do you have a comment on that? Because the part.
I was
Sure.
actually one of the people who, my name's on a complaint.
Yes, on this one.
Yeah, and that was against, just so it's clear, the complaint was during the Cypress letter hearing. Both you and Councilmember Stevens stated you had conflicts of interest, and you left the dais, but you came back and voted. And that was a conflict. You both admitted conflict of interest. Both came back and voted on the final item. I believe that they said on Councilmember Stevens, because he voted against it, it was non-effective to him. But on yours, they did say, basically, don't do it again. and I admit I filed it. If anyone had done that after you declared a conflict, I would have filed it on anybody. I did not discuss it with Art. I did not discuss it with anybody. I made the decision to do that on my own. That if you have an issue with that, I don't know of any other issues that are filed against you, honestly. I have no idea. There is no... Art and I agree on things, we disagree on things, but we are not a single mind. Believe me, we're not a single mind.
My point is that it works both ways. It works all the way around. There's been mud thrown and allegations and so on to everyone sitting up here.
But
we're all, and it's all going to be used against us, according to what you're saying.
No, actually, Marilynn, I didn't say anything to anyone, any place about what I filed until you brought it up just now. It was between you and me, it was between me and the FPPC, and you and the FPPC, and really was no one else's business. That was strictly, you guys did something I felt it was wrong, and you guys declared you had a conflict, and then you came back and voted. It just wasn't right. You never saw me in any way say anything publicly, ever, about this until you brought it up.
But my point is just the point that you made a little earlier when you stood up here, is that all you have to do is do some checking, and Art and his group will do that. So it is used against you. That's enough.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Councilmember Stevens.
If I could get a point of clarification from the city attorney on the two accusations or two FPPC filings.
You got a letter from the FPPC saying you were cleared, you had no conflict of interest. Mayor Pro Tem Poe's matter is still pending because there was some follow-up filed with the FPPC. There was an issue of disputed fact in the letter, and we're still in contact with them trying to get that resolved. So
refresh my
that
memory.
That one's not final yet.
Mr. Eibler said I voted no on it. Did I or didn't I on that one? Do you recall?
I don't remember which way you voted, but it doesn't matter because for purposes of the Political Reform Act, it doesn't matter which way you vote. But the issue is essentially the same as the one that we spoke with Councilmember Mejia about a meeting or two ago, which is that you recused yourself not because of a a Political Reform Act conflict, but because of the possibility of a common law bias conflict. And the FPPC found, just as they did with Councilmember Mejia, that there was no Political Reform Act violation, and therefore they gave you clearance. They don't opine as to common law bias. But you sat out of the portion of the meeting that addressed the issue as to which you thought you might have a common law bias problem. And without getting too much more into ancient history, that's kind of the gist of it.
So in essence, what I did was what you pretty much advised me to do during that period of time.
You made a decision.
To the best that we possibly could.
As is always the case, each one of you makes your own decision on common law bias. I don't advise you that you do or don't have a common law bias. I tell you what the law is in that regard, and you make your own determination. You decided, I think your words were something about, I'll be on the safe side and I'll sit it out.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. So item number 4, the allegations of the violation. We've just talked through that. JM had mentioned that he's pulling that back. Do we require an action on that?
No.
Okay. Like I said, because details are important, you know, we have an opportunity if we want to talk about item number 1 again to get a clear view of that, and I'm willing to do that. And to do that, you know, let's ask Councilmember Kusumoto to step out for just a moment.
I can make a suggestion on that,
Sure.
if you'd like. I certainly understand the concern, and offer a couple of things from me, and then a suggestion to you. The first is, I would request, just personally, that no one use that letter for political purposes. That's not what the city attorney's advice should be used for, and I would hope that it isn't used in any political campaign. I will offer an apology to all of you, in that I really think in hindsight, I probably should have been more vocal about the dangers of heading down this path. And I wasn't, and I should have been, and I'm sorry for that. Most pointedly to Councilmember Kusumoto, but to all of you. The letter says what it says. But everyone has acknowledged here that legal minds differ about issues, and I would venture to guess that since we know from Councilmember Kusumoto that he retained counsel, and he told us he incurred costs in retaining counsel, and that he felt that he was on good ground and that he would be vindicated, that he probably already has received an opinion from an attorney saying that he didn't violate the Brown Act. I wouldn't be at all surprised. And I would invite him to bring that forward, and I won't comment on it. And
Yeah, I don't think there's any issue with that.
I think that, Mayor, I think that's, if we're in the idea of moving forward, I think that's the perfect thing, because if you recall, back in the election, he was accused of ethical violations, and you were the only one who stood up and said, that's not true. So I had respect for you.
I did too.
Oh, I'm sorry, Marilynn. I remember you led with it. How's that? But whatever the case may be, I feel like this is the right thing to do if we're trying to move forward. You know, we've got everybody saying, okay, let's just get past all this ugliness and work together.
Okay.
And so I think that would be a great answer. Thank you, Sandra.
I would like to do my part towards getting past all the ugliness and
No,
putting
we
it behind
appreciate
us.
that. Appreciate the apology too. So do we vote to reconsider, open it up, or do we have to do anything?
I don't think you need to do anything. It's just an invitation to Councilmember Kusumoto to bring that forward if you would like.
And it would become part of the record on this item?
Right.
Okay.
Perfect.
And no motion required, so that's it. So let's go ahead and ask Councilmember Kusumoto to rejoin us.
Thank you, Sandy. That was a great idea.
All right. So I think that we're going to move off of item 9D, and I appreciate the community giving us the opportunity to work through that. It was a tough one, and it seems like if you're just watching this for the first time and going through this, going, God, why so much? But I think if you follow it closely, like our community does, I think that it was well worth every moment we spent. I just want to thank everybody on the council, JM, yourself, and folks in the community that have been a part of this. That really appreciate that, and I think it's going to go a tremendous distance to helping us move forward. Thank you. All right, now we're at mayor and council initiated business. Who'd like to go first?
I'll go real quick.
Sure. Okay. Go ahead.
I'd like to say thank you. A couple of neighbors of mine, I'll just give their first names, Tawny and Christine, came to me regarding an issue where 2 vehicles had been stolen within a couple of days of each other right off the street where we live. And I just wanted to commend them because they took it upon themselves to go around to the neighbors and let them know that that had been happening. And they even came up with a flyer that we were able to leave on people's cars if we couldn't reach them at their door. It got the word out that people needed to be a little bit more careful. I think that we live in a very safe town, but unfortunately people see it as an opportunity. And what I would like to recommend, just as a suggestion, not that you should go out and do it, but if you don't have a alarm on your car, we were telling people maybe a club, because somewhere along the lines, I know I obtained the information that a club is a huge deterrent for someone who's coming to steal a vehicle. So for those of you out there who have experienced the thefts, I just want to say to you, I hope all of that was made whole for you. In the outcome, either with your insurance or, getting the car back. But also to encourage people to take those extra steps to make sure that their vehicles are secured so that they don't fall victim to those people who might come into our community and do these things. I wanted to bring up the race on the base. It was really fun. I got there a little bit later, and Angie and Troy were nice enough to invite me up on top of the fire engine there for a couple days. My leg was so sore because I'm so out of shape I could barely get up that ladder. But I just wanted to say thank you to both of you for letting me be a part of that. And I hope no one minds me mentioning this, but I didn't want there to be any misperception. My son, myself, and my husband and I wore our campaign T-shirts because they were running along with a couple of friends of ours in memory of Brad Sheridan, who was a friend of ours who ran for city council and who just passed away not that long ago at a very young age. So we did run in memory of him because we miss him greatly. And I just wanted to report out that in the 5K, my son Gage, I believe, finished in 19th place overall. So I thought that did justice to Brad's memory. And then also Chris Taylor, who did the 5K walk, she took first place. And that was in memory of Brad also. So I hope that if the family hears this, know that we're continuing to think about you and sending prayers your way. I did want to commend Corey. I know that Chris was doing the walk, and they very specifically said no running along the course because this is a walk. That would be unfair. And she noticed someone who was running part of the time and walking part of the time. And she mentioned it to me right when she came off the course. And I said, well, at least reach out to the Parks and Rec and let them know. I don't know that it will change anything. But turns out the girl who was running actually took first place. And they replaced her. They took her off of the standings and moved Chris up into first. I don't think that was her intent. She just wanted to make sure that moving forward, people know that there are, people for the race that are watching and monitoring. So I just wanted to say thank you guys for taking that extra step, not on behalf of me, but, just to be fair. I get a couple of requests per week. Can we get on our city website with the okay of the council, the schedule of shows that are going to be on? Because people are saying that there are certain things they want to watch, but they can never find it, and there's no way of checking. I know we've discussed this before, but they said maybe even if we could just have it on the city website, that would be good. I know it changes sometimes, so maybe we do it in an area where it's easy to manipulate.
We can definitely do that because the shows are now provided to the News Enterprise on a weekly basis. So we'll just take that, put it on the
Okay, so they
website.
can also go to the News Enterprise. Okay. And I wanted to say thank you to the council and to the staff and to the people who came forward for the community. I was interested in trying to get a 1% reduction for 1 year on the utilities user tax, but it turns out that individually it's not very much. But I think that, as the mayor said, it was really the intent was to give back to the community monies that we have in our reserves that maybe could be better served to the residents and the businesses. But I really liked the ideas that the three different members of the community came up with, and I'm looking forward to addressing that as we move forward with the budget. And I just wanted to thank everyone for the support. Even though it may not have turned out the way I had initially intended it, it's really turning out to be something that's going to be great for the community, and that's what I was interested in. And then also, Mayor, I'd like to ask that we close in the memory of Barbara Collins. She was married to Monty Collins. They have children. Okay, you've got some too, Marilynn. Anyways, Debbie is a friend of mine, and I know that her mom had been sick for a long time, and she's passed and gone to be with God. And I just know that the family is a really good family. They've been here. I think they're the oldest business in the community at this time. So just ask that people keep them in their prayers and thank them for being such a good community partner. They've always given, and I just want to send love to their family. And I'll go ahead and pass it on to you, Mayor.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Stevens.
Yeah, I also wanted to thank Mr. Carbajal, Mr. Ivler, and Mr. Murphy for bringing through some beautiful alternative ideas on how to best benefit the residents in the city, be it anything from the holiday or Christmas decorations to the band in the park, or the parkway needs to be improvement, but these are the things that we enjoy hearing back from the community. And even Angie, I saw a smile on her face when she was hearing things like this, because these are the things that are constructive inside the community. And that's the guidance that is nice to hear from our residents. And it's constructive, simple as that. Orange County Fire Authority, I have not had a meeting, but a lot of correspondence going back and forth on Santa Ana joining the Orange County Fire Authority. And the thought is that it's going to keep the overall cost of operating the fire authority down, and it sounds like it's going to be a wonderful blending of the Orange County Fire Authority with Santa Ana also. And the race on the base, I have to apologize. This is the first race that I've missed in quite a few years, and it's just simply because my normal day job had to take precedent on this one, because that's what pays the bills. But any estimated figures, Corey, at all on how many people attended or anything?
Our estimates of attendance was 3,661 participants this year. Last year we had hit the high point at 3,500, so we have a new high after this year of over 3,600 participants.
Any idea as to how many, not just participants, but spectators came onto the base on this one?
That one's always a tough one to guess. We kind of gauge it based on the number of vehicles that come in and just kind of looking around. We definitely noticed an increase, and we think the weather had a lot to do with that. It was definitely a spectator-friendly day that, they didn't have to hide from the rains or anything like that. So we're estimating around 7,000 people for the event. But again, it's very difficult to gauge the number of spectators versus participants, because obviously people come together as a family. One will participate in the walk, one will participate in the run, and they may have another person that's just there to hang out and show support. So
good. Angie really has worked this for many, many years, and she's worked it to perfection, and now you've taken it to the next level. And so it's a good sign for the staff when it comes down to it. And I had a chance to see LATV's coverage, and I think John Underwood did a wonderful job on it too. And that's something that should be recognized. And like he said, if you have a chance, watch it on television. It's phenomenal what he did with all the interviews and everything. The last thing is I want to thank all my colleagues for moving forward with the business of the city. After we've had quite a few of these items that we've discussed, and I'm hoping that everybody's going to eliminate some of the tension, built-up hostilities, whatever they might be, that have built up over the years. It's time to get it together, move the city forward, get it back to where, as Pete Carbajal said, the branding of our city. Yeah, this should be a beautiful brand for the city as well as for the city council too. And it's progression, taking the city to the next level and keeping it a wonderful place for all of us to live. That's all I've got.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Kusumoto.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, you know, I know all this peace and love and all is all nice and all, but I just want to say I think the city council and the city attorney went way too far. And certainly I laughed about it. I thought it was amusing, but now I'm really just upset in case you didn't really figure that out. Now, I had set up a meeting with the city attorney to meet with her on Friday. We tried to meet Tuesday and it didn't work. And Friday it was on, and time was established, the location was established, and everything was going smooth. And then the city attorney, however inappropriately, decides to invite the entire city council, which then puts it into basically a special closed session. Now, I thought that was very inappropriate, didn't consult with me. The nature of the meeting that I had planned with the city attorney was to ask some very specific questions. So being denied that ability to gather information that I'm entitled to receive and I'm obligated to receive, so I can understand the litigation that was been before us and the decisions that we're making, I have my questions here that I'm going to ask. And I'm not sure that the city attorney is going to answer them, but I'll ask the questions anyways. City attorney, who was the unidentified council member that met with Holly Watley and Jeff Stewart on the 11th of September 2011? What did they discuss for the 1.5 hours that they met? Did the other council members know about this meeting, and were they informed of the topics discussed? One answer?
Tell me the date again.
The 11th of September. City attorney, who was the unidentified council member that exchanged memoranda with Holly Watley on the 11th of September? Were the copies of these memorandum provided to the council as a whole so we can understand the nature of the discussions and deliberate on the issue? City attorney, who was the unidentified council member that sent and received emails with Holly Watley on the 15th of September? And were these emails disclosed to other members of the council in closed session? City attorney, who was the unidentified county attorney, the unidentified council member that exchanged memorandum with Holly Watley and the city manager on the 19th of September. Were copies of these memorandum disclosed or provided to the city council in closed session? City attorney, who was the unidentified council member that had a conference with Sandra Levin and the city manager to discuss strategy for oral argument on the 27th of September? Was the strategy for oral arguments brought back to the city council for discussion in closed session? City attorney, who was the unidentified client that had a 2.6-hour conference with you on the 3rd of November, which resulted in revisions to the staff report? Was the content of the staff report shared with the members of the council in closed session? Who was the identified council member that had a conference with Holly Watley and the city manager regarding the status and strategy on the 8th of November? Was this strategy shared with other council members in closed session? If so, what was the date of the closed session, and what was the decision by the council? City attorney, you exchanged correspondence with the Trash Haulers Council on the 11th of November. I would think that as a member of the city council that we're entitled to see those memoranda, those correspondence, and when do we get to see those? I would like to have a copy of that. City Attorney, you had multiple conferences with an unidentified client regarding the status of the matter, strategy, and options on the 16th of November. Were these strategies, options, and on the matter discussed in closed session with the other council members? If so, what was the date and what was the decision? City Attorney, who was the unidentified council member that had conferences regarding settlement issues and strategy with you on the 30th of November? And were these strategies discussed with the other council members in closed session? Now, this is where it gets really to be fun. City Attorney, you met with the plaintiffs on the 30th of November and the 2nd of December. And there were certain things that were going to be discussed at the settlement discussions. Then I sent this letter out trying to recuse myself, in error from closed session on the 5th. So these are the dates, the 30th of November, the 2nd of December, and the 5th. Yet you wrote in your 10-page write-up about disclosure of a split in the council, and you did this after I sent my letter, after you met with plaintiffs. City Attorney, I am just really disgusted with the way that you just handled that. I think you purposely wrote something down that you knew was not true. You met with the plaintiffs, you disclosed certain information that was allowed, and then you wrote the 10-page letter that said I might have leaked confidential information that led the plaintiffs to understand there's a split in the council. Now, this is where it gets real fun. On the 1st of December, you make a change, and you now start referencing in your in the records I've seen, a council representative. And I think you really meant council-designated settlement representative. So this has been asked before, and it wasn't answered. I don't expect it to be answered now. At what point was Mayor Edgar made the council-designated settlement representative? It wasn't any of the closed sessions that I was in. So I'm asking when it was, and that was going to be one of my questions I wanted to ask you last Friday. So when was Mayor Edgar made the council designated?
Are you done with the list?
I have one more. Okay. On the 23rd of January, 2012, Mayor Edgar announced that the city is at impasse relative to reaching a settlement on the trash lawsuit with the plaintiffs. At what closed session was that discussed? And what was the vote that we're at an impasse?
Okay. All of the questions that have to do with what happened in closed session, I'm happy to meet with you and give you answers. To the extent I can, I will try. I don't necessarily have details about every one of the dates, but I will certainly try and give you answers, but I'm not going to do that publicly because that wouldn't be appropriate. Most of the questions where you asked, was that discussed with the city council in closed session? The answer is probably not. I'd have to look back at the specifics of those, but generally speaking, there's a lot of back and forth, especially when it says conference with client. That typically means the city manager, and that doesn't all go back to closed session. As for who exchanged memoranda with Ms. Watley of my office as she prepared the pleadings and the testimony that went to court and gathered that evidence, I don't have that at my fingertips, but I can find it. A portion of the time period that you're asking about, I was out of the country as well. So I will see if I can find out from her. She may or may not have records as to who she spoke with, but we did collect declarations and testimony as well as discuss strategy about how to proceed with typically with the city manager, but also occasionally with others, including you. Member Kusumoto, you had several conversations with me about the strategy in the case.
Four conversations.
Okay.
Okay. Councilmember Kusumoto, do you have any other comments outside of your questions?
No, I'm done.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tempo.
Thank you. Well, this last week and a half has been pretty busy. Of course, the race on the base. I was not able to attend, to my dismay, but I had a prior commitment, and I was afraid if I got there early, I wasn't going to be able to get out because of the cars and the traffic. And my prior commitment is with my granddaughter, which that tops everything. So, but I would like to tell the staff that my son worked with, he was out there with Rotary, and he has worked, I don't know how many years, you know, with signups and so on. And he raved and raved about how wonderful this was this year. He said it was absolutely the best. It was so well run. Everything just went, he couldn't talk enough about it. And I asked the question because I couldn't remember, but we did hire a new person to help with this. And you've given it, it is Run Racing, is that it, with Bob Segrin? And I recall when he was here and we voted to do that. So it sounds like it paid off, that they helped a lot. And of course the staff, you know, we know how much work goes into this. And I know that they've already started working on next year, I'm sure. So I just would like to say that I have heard several things, not just from my son, but from other people that were out there, at how great it was. On Sunday, on that evening, was of course the Americana at Cypress College, the Cypress College Americana. That's a yearly event, and the recipients of that award from the Los Alamitos Rossmore area were Jim and Shirley Bailey. It is a beautiful, beautiful event. It takes place at the Disneyland Hotel, and it's just really a fun thing to go to, and especially you can cheer for you know, the people from your community. And I know that Jim and Shirley had quite a contingent of their family and friends there, besides 2 tables of members of the community. And it was just such a pleasure to see the 2 of them get this award because they're so deserving in the community. On Sunday, February the 26th, I had the extreme pleasure of attending the 50th anniversary dinner celebration of Good Shepherd Presbyterian Church. It was absolutely one of the most fun things I've been to. Those Presbyterians are fun people, I'll tell you. There was history clear back to Reverend Zerbel that started this church. And of course, living in the community for so long, I knew most of the people that attended church there. There was wonderful music, a beautiful dinner, a lot of testimony, and they ended it with movies of the groundbreaking for the church and the building of it, which was really, really nice. So I just was very honored to be present at that. On Wednesday, February the 22nd, attended the mayor's group at the Joint Forces Training Base. Our mayor was not going to be able to be there for the whole time, so I went to help fill in for him, and our city manager was there. And it's always fun to go to those, and we got a very good overview of what's going on at the base, their plan for the future, how the building is going on, and so on and so forth. And because we have heard about this, I did ask the question about BRAC. And that is the process that the government goes through when they decide that it's time to close bases. And we have been through that before. I personally have gone and testified why it's important for us to keep the Joint Forces Training Base. But I hope we weren't given information that put us a little bit too much at ease. My request of them was if you hear that there's anything, let us know ahead of time so that we can help with that process. But it was kind of explained that our base is really small in comparison to a lot of the bases, and that they really wouldn't save a whole lot of money, and that this base really serves a huge purpose, and it most likely would not be on the list. So that was good news to hear. But again, there's nothing for sure. I want to announce, as we have so far, here's the little flyer, Stephen. On Thursday, March 8th, is going to be Bridging Our Community. It is going to be at St. Isidore Historical Plaza Hall, and it's going to be on the night when the food trucks are there. And we are also going to be having, and this is very coincidental, Pastor Wilson from the Presbyterian Church belongs to a band. And I just heard tonight that Tony Brandeberry's father plays in that band. So he'll be there. And I love the name, Crow's Feet. And it refers to their crow's feet. So they will be there playing. And this is an opportunity for people in the community to come out, have a good time. There's music, there's the food trucks. But also to be able to go in, look at what has been done for the general plan, give input to that, and we've heard tonight this will be a good opportunity to ask what people in the community would like in terms of what we can do to enhance the community for them. So there are going to be 3 of these sessions. The other one is Saturday, March 17th, and that's at the community center, and the third one is Tuesday, March the 20th at the community center. So we really want everyone in the community to try to make it to one of these, because no one here has a crystal ball. The only way we know what people in the community would like to see our community look like in 5, 10, 15 years is if they tell us. So it's important to come to these and let your voice be heard. On Wednesday, and this was brought up earlier, Wednesday, March 21st is the Los Alamitos Chamber Police Appreciation Awards Luncheon. And it is such a wonderful thing to go to every year. We're also proud of our police department, and this is a chance for us to kind of say thank you. And I know that it sells out quick. So anyone that's interested in going, it's Wednesday, like I said, the 21st at 11 a.m. Lunch will begin promptly at 11:30, and this is going to be out at the Eagle's Nest. So if you're interested in going to that, you need to get your ticket for that as soon as possible. The next thing is another exciting thing, the save the date for Wednesday, March 14th, the shade structure dedication at the pool. I'm just really excited to see how that came out. This is something that we've really wanted. This is the flyer for it for a long time. So anyone that feels like they would like to go, it's at 4 o'clock. Please feel free to do that. I just was given access to this, and I just really do feel like I'm not going to talk about this. I'm going to save it for another time. I don't want to put a bad light on what we've done already. I also would like to say that Mrs. Collins was absolutely one of the loveliest people in this community, and I was so saddened when I heard that she had passed. Monty was one of the pillars of the community, and she was always right there supporting everything that he did. And it was very sad when we lost Monty Collins in this community, because he was just a very formidable person in the community. And I, as I said, was so sad to hear that that Mrs. Collins has passed. And so I concur that I would like to see us close in her memory.
Great. All right. Real quick, so Orange County Sanitation District, a lot of stuff going on there. Just a report that I've was at the board meetings. We're getting ready for end of year budgeting. The Americana Awards, I just want to again congratulate Jim and Shirley Bailey for getting Citizens of the Year. It was a great event. I want to give thanks to Councilmember David Shaver, Mayor Pro Tem David Shaver in Stanton. He has been, we've been collectively, our council, all the councils here, Cypress including, we've been focused on the Golden State Water issue. And he was able to get the Golden State Water Group to actually have their CPUC, or California Public Utilities Commission, hearing moved to the Stanton Chamber, and they actually had that last Friday at 2 o'clock and 6 o'clock. And pretty big deal. It's moving the mountain to Mohammed type mentality. Is usually the CPUC, they'll have a regional district meetings, but they'll do them up in LA. They don't usually feel the influence, especially on one issue of many that the CPUC would hear. So the Golden State Water issue, I think effectively it's just another sign that when the cities band together, we're strong as a group of cities. And David Shaver, no one was fighting harder than him as a city council member in Stanton to get everybody together. And I just want to congratulate him and thank him for all of his hard work. Marilynn, I just also wanted to thank you for the meeting for the elected officials meeting on the base. I had flown in the morning, went to that meeting, got there a little late. I knew I was going to have a problem. I appreciate you going. Then I had the sanitation district had to leave, and so thank you for going to that. I also have another issue coming up. If anybody's interested, on Thursday the city selection meeting is coming up down at the Hilton. I know, Warren, you've expressed a couple times of that you may go to these. You're about the only one I've been seeing lately there. I potentially need somebody to cover to vote for Los Alamitos because I may have a hard time getting back in town in time for that meeting. So can anybody stand in? The SCAG item is up for vote. No one's in on that. That's Andy Quatch for Westminster. The whole structure of the ACCOC is up. So Peter Herzog, I think, as you guys have seen in your packet from Lake Forest, is budding to be the legislative lead. And I'm pretty supportive of him because I think he's really advocated for good parts for our cities. But I don't want to miss our vote. So if is anybody willing to go Thursday? Business starts at 5:15 in the Hilton in Costa Mesa.
Is it this Thursday?
What's that?
This Thursday?
Yeah. Anybody?
I just can't.
You can't.
I'll check. I'll let you know.
Okay, great. Thank you. The police luncheon, one of the things that Mayor Pro Tem Poe left off is that we have a very, very important speaker going to be there at that. That's our chief. So, yeah, we've tried all the rest, but now we're going to the best.
To the best.
So, I want to set that expectation very similar to when he said he was going to beat everybody in the 10K race on the base last year. So it's going to be a good one, Chief. So we're looking forward to it. And, anybody that's seen the invitation put out by the chamber, really.
It's nice. It's
beautiful,
really
but and you'll see the people that they're looking to honor is just another good year.
I should have
Yeah,
done that.
no, that's
So
okay.
there.
So, Officer of the Year, Officer Gallagher. Employee of the Year, David Jenkins. Policing through Partnerships, Patty Laird, which we've seen up here, and Speaker Todd Mattern. So this is at the Eagle's Nest. I'd ask everybody to be there. Like Marilynn said, this thing sells out pretty fast, and especially with Todd speaking. It's going to be huge. I guess two things. One kind of point of order, we're trying to, or point of business, we're trying to now move to the next level and see where we can go with this. Something that was brought up early on in the year is to take a look at city council meetings and see if there's any way to figure out to consolidate to one a month. Can you put in the queue down the road? And Councilmember Mejia had brought that up, so this isn't something that I brought, but it was, a lot of us serve on regional boards that are 10 to 15 times bigger than the city, and they meet once a month, and they figure out ways to do that. And ways to try to kind of help on staff time, morale. And this meeting's almost at midnight, so Not that one meeting wouldn't last till 4 a.m, but I think that, if we could kind of, if we can parlay it. But, what I'm trying to do is, is to listen and to see if there's a way to do that. And obviously keep an open mind, and it doesn't have to be on the next agenda item. Just put it out there as something that we'd mentioned. I'd just like to kind of bring it to the attention now that we're knocking a bunch of the other stuff off. I guess in closing, Angie, do you have the note? There's a ceremony going on at Sunburst Youth Academy that I believe is on the 6th. Yeah.
10 a.m.
Yeah, and 10 a.m. on the 16th of March, and they're going to be dedicating a new wing to their school over there. So if anybody's interested in the community, please see Angie. She may not have the answer right now, but she does in her office. So, but that's going to be a great event, and continues our partnership with the base. I just want to thank again the City Council for tonight was a really important night. I think that you can see that we all are trying to really be sensitive, careful. We really see the great things that are going on in the community, and we made a big play. Angie likes to say it's not always about her, but and kind of the essence of the day of running the city on an ongoing basis. We put Angie in on a 5-0 vote, and she has an entire team behind her. And I think that we are trying to be consistent with what we had said in our support of Angie going forward. We have some challenges coming up budget-wise, but I think tonight was just a really good discussion. It's the best I felt about really trying to open my mind constructively, and even looking surplus and trying to do something for the city. I think that the community input from JM, from Richard Murphy, from Pete Carbajal, all those, I think it was great input. And again, the way that maybe we're turning over a new leaf and having a more open community meeting, and not so structured, and a little bit more free-flowing community input. Anyway, I think that's all I have at this point. I'll turn it over to the city manager. Do you have any comments?
I don't have any of the normal things to report about streets and parks and all of that. That can't wait for another 2 weeks because everything is going ahead nicely. But I just want to say thank you to the council for moving forward tonight the way you did. I think the community will really benefit from that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. We're going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting to Monday, March 19th, 2012. We are now adjourned. Oh, and I'd also like to close in the memory of Barbara Collins. We just we wish the best for her family, and we'd like to close in her memory. Thank you. Good night.